Rafna, sound check.
Yeah, I can hear you, Lily.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want us we start session. We start the session with a quick round of introduction. I want the mic to pass around. The technicals will get things sorted in the fullness of time. Please confirm that on your respective table, you can see a number of items. I'll ask for one meeting, please. One meeting, please. Please confirm that in your respective tables, you have a document that is showing a QR code to what you call the project documents. Should you click there, you will be taken to our Google Drive folder labeled VPA Improve Biomass, where my colleagues have ensured that today's PowerPoint presentation agenda and non-technical summary have been added. At the same time, you'll be seeing a form labeled Stakeholder Comment Form, where I'll be requesting that in the fullness of time in today's conversation, you are giving us more and more comments. There's also another QR code requesting or asking you to click there, also submit your comments online. If you don't have this QR codes, please just raise your hand and my colleague will make sure you have a copy of the same. So we want to start here. We want to start the introduction. I don't know where the mic is. We want to start. Yes, please just tell us who you are, organization, and we quickly move around.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm called Busura Al. I'm working with the Energy Uganda Foundation. Good afternoon, everyone. Samuel Asim is my name from Joseph Redress. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Farouk Chidiowa is my name from Energy Uganda Foundation. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mama Isma from African Energy Environment Savings Program Construction Limited, Kabakazi Tech Link Road, a member of Biomass Energy Efficient Technologies Association, a member of UNA.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Redress from Grievance.
Good afternoon. Just a second. Daniel from Cook and Save Consultants Limited. Cook and Save is a member of Biomass Energy Efficient Technologies Association. Better in the brief. I'm privileged to be here.
Thank you very much. I'm called Redress. I work with broad diversity.
I'm Gregory Frederick from the Accountability Group.
Yes, Ministry of Energy. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I am from Carbon.
Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to work with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Been an activist from the lab.
Morning, ladies. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Moses Wangmoses. My name is from
My name is Anna Karaji. I work with Upland Uganda.
Greetings, everyone. This is John. Very glad to be here. Climate management.
Hello everyone, I'm Miriam Joho from Carbon Technology Uganda, a member of Clean Cooking Alliance and also Media Stand.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Professor Jonah. Also work with the support recommendation renewable energy department.
Good afternoon. Thomas Mendes from Stop Plus Union of Contractors, Entebbe Road.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph Janima. I work with Grievance International and Environmental Communication Generation. Thank you.
I am from Ministry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Yoatio, Abia Group Limited.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul. We manufacture biomass pellets and gas fired stores.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Justine Akumu, Ministry of Energy and Development.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jay, and we are manufacturers of biomass pellets as well as gas-fired cook stoves for school as well as domestic consumption. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nansamba Victor from Remba Senior School. We are potential end users.
A very good afternoon. My name is Kenya Hakim, an ambassador Emeu.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephen Otagi. I'm from Kibwe Farmers.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nancha Jane Rona from Chireka Home Primary School.
Good afternoon, neighbors. My name is Twaha Namudia from TK Energy Solutions.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nancy Rivers from Array Clean Solutions.
Rugendo Amos, Uganda.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Frederick Katiru from EcoTrust.
Thank you. Go to the ones who are online to see who's online and see the can introduce themselves. Please just unmute your mic. If you're online, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Sandra Kwamboka, a carbon market agent.
Sandra Kwamboka, a carbon market agent. Sandra Kwamboka, a carbon market.
Charles, can I proceed?
Next, please. Your mic and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rahma Faiz, an information design specialist at Vast Carbon. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Siraj Kamgisha from Good Briquette Initiative Limited. I also happen to be the national chairperson for the briquette thematic at UNAC. Thanks.
Thank you. Lastly, Tom Starton, if you can hear, please unmute your mic and introduce yourself. Tom. to then just proceed in today's conversation. Today's conversation is about a local stakeholder consultation for what is called the Uganda National Multi-Fuel Cooking Carbon Program of Activities. And particularly, we're looking at how to go about developing the voluntary projects of activities for the case of clean cooking by way of using improved biomass stoves, in which case the fuels we're looking at are the likes of pellets, briquettes, and firewood. For today's conversation, before I get into the technical details, I'll want to invite Mr. Christopher Shobia to give us the setting of what is expected, the mission and vision of the ministry with respect to cooking, and then we can get into the conversation. And as it comes, please remember there is a lot of what we call the project documents available on your table, but simply using your phone, scanning the QR code, and getting to access to all these things. My colleagues will ensure that today's agenda, technical summary, as well as the PowerPoint presentation have been added to the respective folder online. Karibu.
Thank you. Firstly, we hope to have a representative from the British High Commission perspective. Hope to have some partners participating with us and other relevant stakeholders. So I want to recognize them in absentia, but also recognize the participation of different lobbying partners who are here present with us. And to you, dear stakeholders who are here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to Kampala Stakeholder. We start this engagement on the 30th March 2026 at Kenron Hotel, where we showcased the program of activities. And we have now narrowed down in good at Boma Hotel for electric. We also want to appreciate all those that followed us in Eastern region when we are also talking about electric cooking in Mbale at Ocean Beach Hotel. Today, we are here. We started in the morning with bioethanol. We had big turnout of participants for bioethanol session. And we are now proceeding with biomass session. We want to welcome each and every. And this will move around. Tuesday, we are going to host a session on LPG. Then finally, on the 30th, we are going to be in Western Uganda in Hotel Tribe discussing about biogas. We want to thank you for following us in all these areas where we are. But we also want to encourage you that where we get fish to also follow us. We hope to see you here in the morning when we are discussing about, who are interested. We want to thank you so much. Before I invite the representative of the commissioner to come and give opening remarks, these are a few expectations of this engagement. But I will first recognize, I know they introduced themselves, but allow me recognize the presence of other colleagues, apart from the representative of the commissioner, who are here, maybe to stand up briefly so that you see them from the Ministry of Energy. The representatives, they can stand up so that you see them officially. So they are there. Those are part of the ministry and others yet to come. So we are here specifically to present to you the program of activities, and the consultants will take us through, and we shall also be able to take you through different value chains under their VPS. The program of activities that we are designing is focusing on the 6 value chains. As you may have noted, we are looking at electric cooking, both in households and institutions. We are also looking at bioethanol, which we had in the morning. Right now, we are also having biomass, improved biomass, which we're also talking about. So the pellets team, Gayaza team, we are going to also discuss about it. Then we're also going to talk about LPG on Tuesday, as I've said. That is part of the 6 value chains that we are talking about, both at household and institutional. Then we are also going to talk about biogas, which we hope also talk about, as I said. So all of these will be presented to you. We also hope to share with you the methodology that is going to be used so that you also understand it. We are also going to show you the benefit sharing arrangement, but also we are also going to show you the grievance sharing mechanism, which is also going to be shared by the consultants. We want to thank them so far where they have reached, and we know by the end of the day, each and everyone here will have understood what we are talking about. And finally, we hope to get feedback from you, because what is being designed for your own use. So we should design what actually works for you. So your input in this structure is very important, because we want what works for you. So we should design what works for you. With those few, that kind of information, allow me now invite Justin Akumu to give official opening remarks for this kind of engagement. I thank you. Let's give a round of applause as Justin Akumu is coming.
Good afternoon, fellow colleagues in the biomass sector. I'd also like to recognize the presence of our partners who are supporting us. I'll start with the UK government through the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, who are actually supporting this intervention. And this intervention is being provided through the Uganda Electric Cooking Support and Scale project. So under this project, we have one of the key interventions and the flagship activities of this project is to design a carbon program, a program of activities that aims to, again, aggregate and mobilize resources so that we can have access to finance to scale our clean cooking interventions. From our National Integrated Clean Cooking Strategy, we have a target to achieve universal clean cooking access. And here we are looking along the 6 value chains that Dr. Tashabia has spoken about. We are looking at transitioning. We want to have no 3-stone fire, and that is both at the household and at the institutional level. We also want to graduate from these metallic, inefficient cook stoves. So we want to start from what we call class 3 cook stoves in line with the current existing biomass standards. But also we want to see a transition from using gas, yeah? So by 2030, we are targeting to have at least 30% of our population using gas. We also target to have about 10% of our population using ethanol. We target to have 20% using electricity, and the remaining percentage, about 50%, we want them to use, as they continue to use biomass in form of firewood and charcoal. We want them to use efficient cooking solutions. We also have very high targets for using pellets and briquettes, and here we are targeting to have at least 10%. And as we have more activities going on, we know that percentage is even going to grow. But those are the 2030 transitions. As we move towards 2040, we are seeing a reduction in the use of firewood and charcoal and a push. The populations that are still relying on biomass, we want them to use pellets and briquettes, and then we want to use more modern forms of cooking. But in order to do that, we need to mobilize financing. In order for the ministry to achieve its clean cooking targets, we need $200 million annually. Unfortunately, that's money we don't have as government. But then what can we do? Carbon financing presents an opportunity for us to then, tap into these resources so that we can mobilize capital for the private sector and, support the private sector to innovate and improve technology, and also, provide and support the public to continuously use these clean cooking solutions. We don't want to have them backslide for one reason or another. So this intervention is very important because we want to have a carbon program where each and every private party can participate. We believe by doing that, we'll be able to mobilize a large quantity of carbon, carbon credits, but also by enabling people to all participate, then we shall have a fair market. We don't want somebody selling the cook stove at 10,000 shillings, because it's in a carbon program, yet you, actually the one selling the cook stove at 10,000 has bought it from you who's selling it at 20,000, but you're continuing to sell yours at 20,000. So it means you can't sell yours for as long as he's having, his product on the market. So those market distortions we've seen have really affected the adoption of clean cooking solutions. So as we design this intervention, we want it to be as holistic as possible, and would like to have your participation on how we can design something that works, where the government can support in enabling the environment for a carbon program, and each and every person can participate. So this is the main intervention behind this whole process. So as we participate in this, I would like to urge you to please give us your feedback. Please be as candid as possible. Where it doesn't work, please tell us so that we can incorporate this and have a program that works for all of us. So with those few remarks, I'd like to ask, then hand over to the consultant, that's Vast Carbon, to then take us through the design of this intervention. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Please, a round of applause, please. So I'll keep on reiterating about the project documents. Please scan the QR code you can see on your table, and you'll be able to access these documents. Now, the reality is that the different possible fuels that one can use for clean cooking is just a question of the circumstances of the communities you're trying to engage with. Now, like I was always saying in the morning session, that there's one thing whereby you can easily sell the stove to the household, and now there's the other thing that we make sure the household is going to make sure they utilize. Now, statistically speaking, the vast majority in the current landscape is that there's a very good or the over-reliance on biomass for cooking. That then means that for persons looking to go into clean cooking by using biomass fuel, this being pellets and whatnot, then you have already opportunity. But then the question is, how can we move towards making sure we can leverage carbon finance? For the sake of those who might not be familiar with carbon finance, here we're in the business of seeing how can you deploy a cook stove for cooking that is able to reduce the emissions from the business as usual scenario to the current scenario which you're looking at introducing your intervention. Now, the reality in this context is this, that we are looking at a market whereby the business as usual is a group of communities that are currently using, let's say, firewood or even charcoal for cooking, and you being an implementing partner, you're looking to present the case of whereby maybe you're using pellets or maybe you're using firewood, but your value proposition is that the cooking equipment is better than potentially the tree stone. Okay, that's the first scenario. When you're looking at somebody who's, or a household or a school that is using firewood, for example, and it's using the tree stone, the kind of efficiency you're looking at there is about usually about 15% or so, the energy efficiency. For you to be able to leverage carbon credits and still rely on biomass as the source of fuel, be it pellets, whatnot, the key value proposition that you then must have is you must look at a scenario whereby you are presenting a stove that has a higher or better energy efficiency. We shall be looking at different carbon accounting mechanisms, and you realize that the vast majority of them are looking towards something whose efficiency is better than 40%. Why? Because if 3-stone cooking with fire is about 15%, for you to talk about emissions reduction, you must look at the case of energy efficiency in your case. So the stove you're suggesting must be of a better energy efficiency. Some of the successful projects that I know of within the cooking sector that have been able to get carbon credits issued to them, and they're still using, let's say, fire or even pellets, you'll find that most of those stoves, the efficiency of those stoves is in excess of 65%. Why? Because you're not looking at a case of fuel switch in most cases. Your case is only in the case of the energy efficiency. So the more efficient the stove is, the more savings you can talk about. That is the value proposition that I was saying for improved biomass. And where does this improved biomass sit within the grand scheme of things? Like I mentioned, the different possible fuels that one can use for clean cooking. There are quite a number of them. The only question here is, how does one particular fuel running on particular stores fit into the government's National Clean Cooking Multi-Fuel Program of Activities? The government is keen to promote all fuels. We are looking at the case of LPG, electric cooking, ethanol, and biogas. But for today's conversation this afternoon, we are looking at the case of the improved biomass stoves, be it pellets, briquettes, and firewood. All of them, of course, are uniquely different, but that's the scenario. All fuels are admissible. The only question is, what is the overriding cooking equipment that will be used for these different fuels? And because if you're looking at improved biomass, the fuel switch might be very negligible if you're looking at firewood to firewood, then the only good case you can make is, are we able to make sure that you're deploying a cook stove that has got a higher energy efficiency? I think I've heard of some suppliers of these stoves in the room, and I'll be keen to listen to some of the stoves you are currently deploying and to see how it fits in everything. Now, because carbon finance has got a cost component, there are two options. One option is whereby we're having the different companies go out by themselves and do the clean cooking project by themselves. Alternatively, if it does not make the economic sense for one to do it by themselves because it's cost prohibitive, or maybe there's a knowledge gap in terms of how to do the carbon finance, their proposition that the ministry is saying is, we are willing to do the aggregation. So for example, I'll be very honest, if you're looking at a typical stove being able to generate 1 credit per annum, let's say for example, and we'll look at those numbers shortly. And let's say over the last 1 or 2 years, you're able to distribute, over the next 1 or 2 years, you're able to distribute 10,000 stoves. Theoretically speaking, you're looking at 10,000 credits, yeah? But the cost of having a project audited, if it's a small scale project, you're looking at about 20 to 30,000 USD, for example. That's not counting the cost of opening an account. That's not counting the cost of you doing a baseline study, and among many other costs. Okay? If you are to sell those credits from the biomass stove at about $8, because that's the typical average I've been seeing from credits from improved biomass stoves, and you're generating 10,000 credits per annum, you're looking at about 80,000 USD, which will only come when you have the initial cost of doing the project. So for small developer, and I say small, I mean as in you don't have the capacity to do like in the hundreds of thousands, it will only make sense if you see a scenario whereby we pull it together into one bucket. If you're dealing with, let's say, pellets, we pull it into one bucket and leverage the economies of scale. So as you let us, with the ministry, focus on the technical details of the carbon accounting, and you focus on the business of making sure that you have a very highly efficient energy cooking equipment, that you can ensure as many households are able to acquire it and utilize it. And remember, you're displacing the right fuel. You cannot go to a household using electricity and you're attempting to do this. There's no displacement there. It's negative, right? So you're looking at the houses that are still relying on the 3 stones for transition, or in the case of the schools. We know there are some stoves that are running using charcoal, but it's the metallic ones without any kind of ceramic lining, so the efficiency is also very, very low. That one you can transition. Okay, the key thing is whoever you're looking to transition in the guise of getting carbon finance, you must be able to make a case of displacement. Are you together? The long and short of it is this. Yes, you can get carbon credits from improved biomass stoves. How much you get depends with how much are you displacing. I hope that point is clear for those who are looking at supporting with the improved biomass. I hope that point is clear, right? You can get carbon credits. How much you'll be getting will be depending on how much are you displacing, which will be influenced by the efficiency of your stove. Are you together? Together? Yes. So the more efficient your stove is, the better it is for the numbers. And if you have a challenge of seeing how can you get into the carbon business, that's why the meeting is saying there's a call and request for guys come on board and we see how we can do improve biomass as a way of clean cooking together as a block entity and not individual companies. Is that point clear? Now, we are not just targeting houses, we are also targeting institutions, okay? Because for so long, we've always been focusing on the case of households. But you also realize that institutions, including places like here, any institution that is engaged in the business of cooking, perhaps the mode of cooking, the fuel, or even the stoves they're using is not that efficient. So again, you come across a school that's not using a so efficient way of cooking, and you feel your position can bring about some sort of displacement, then that institution is also ripe for the transition. It's always about improving the efficiency. Because even if you're going to be running on firewood or you're running on pellets, an efficient stove means you'll be using less pellets and less firewood, etc., which is still supporting the initiative, because we can't all transition from 3 stone all the way to electric. We want to, but the reality speaks different. I hope you're all together. So we're looking at the different fuels, but for today's conversation, we'll want to focus all the conversations with respect to what we have here, which is improved biomass cooking. Together. So some of the conversations you're having before lunch, you can have them now if there are any pending queries, but this is the session for it. Before I proceed, is that point clear on the program of our activities? The big picture is multi-fuel for cooking, but the specific picture for today afternoon is an improved biomass. Are we all together? Any question, clarification, comments? We're all together, right? Okay, good. Now, there are different methodologies applicable, yeah? And just like the case of bioethanol, biogas, LPG, different methodologies requires different circumstances. Now, ordinarily, and I want to use this word very carefully, ordinarily, the vast majority of improved biomass stoves have not been able to be metered, okay? But there have been certain companies coming up with some emerging technologies. If you think about it, how are you able to know the consumption of firewood or pellets from an improved biomass stove? It comes down to heat, temperature. There are some developers or some companies have been able to have a sort of sensor that can sense the amount of heat within the combustion chamber and therefore meter their stoves to know reliably how much energy is being generated from a particular fuel, be it firewood or pellets. I like to use the example of this particular stove because it's really been very revolutionary. It's Mimi Moto. You can look for it, Mimi Moto. Yeah, Mimi Moto is by EcoSafi. It's a gasifier stove running on pellets, and they're able to put a sensor to see how much heat is generated in the combustion. And because of that, being able to do it so reliably, they've been able to get favorable price. If you're able to do something like that, then the first methodology shown there on the board will be the one applicable to your stove. I know it is not easy. I know there's a cost implication, but that's why we are here to see what some of the possibilities for us to enhance integrity. And my colleague here, the technology officer at Basketball, will tell you the MRV is not necessarily cheap. There's a cost for the research and development. There's a cost per stove. There's a cost to scale. But the purpose of this program is to see how can we, as the consultants working with the ministry, support you and explore all these options. That's why we are here. Be it the hardware side, the software side, that's why we're really here to see, is it possible for us to go that extra mile to add the extra layer of integrity and transparency to improve biomass cooking. But it's a journey we must work together. Are you together? I hope I'm not losing anyone. Yeah? There's a world of possibilities. All it requires is us to work together. For scenarios whereby we might not be able to have such sensors for one reason or the other, we shall have to adopt the other applicable methodologies that you can see. There is one called TPDD Tech, which is the technology and practices to displace decentralized thermal energy consumption. That is most likely what's going to be the most applicable, but there's also the other one, which is now called the CLEAR methodology, the comprehensive load emissions assessment and reporting. Now, later we shall be talking about, for those that cannot be metered, how can we still monitor them? The terminology you'll be hearing me talk about today for this session, which is called stove usage monitoring or SUM, we must be able to deploy this. Now, unfortunately, because you cannot meter, then the requirements will be a bit extra strict. If you're looking to do the project and you're sampling, let's say you're looking to deploy it in 1,000 households, we must ensure we have a robust stove usage monitoring plan for a representative sample of those 1,000 households in the entirety of the project. And the hope is that that representative sample will be used to reflect on the others that have not been sampled. Are you together? But the tricky part is this. If you're doing a nationwide project, I don't think we can take a sample of Gulu to reflect the sample for household in Kampala, can we? Good. So if you'll be courageous enough and say, I'm going to distribute my stoves in 50 different districts, then the representative sampling must also be done at the district level, because one district might be different from another district in terms of the baseline. Are you together? Now, I know it's an extra layer of complication, but the reality is, because if you can't measure how much fuel your stove is using, then there's a very slippery slope, there's a very thin line between being very accurate and doing what you call over-crediting, which has been the problem of the ecosystem from afar. So we shall look at how do we do those kind of sampling, but that is the reality for the stoves that cannot be sampled. Now, key to note is that for those willing to be part of the engagement, the stores have to meet a certain minimum criteria. So the carbon standards often tell you that 40% is the bare minimum. The ministry will see if that is enough, or do we go higher than that? And should that criteria be set, then we must make sure we meet that particular criteria for the thermal efficiency. An important point is on for how long can we get this credit, and this is a very important factor. For this kind of project, we're looking at a period of about 5 years, the duration within which you are allowed to get the carbon credits, which can be renewed twice. So we're looking at a scenario whereby if you start up the project today, have it registered by July, we can do it for about 5 years to 15, depending on how much you can renew it. It sounds lucrative, right? But the question is, can your stove go for 15 years? Because the crating period will only make sense dependent on the lifespan of your stove. So maybe I could ask, what is the typical lifespan of the store, the improved biomass stores we have in the market? Household, yeah. Household and also institutional. What are the typical lifespan? 2 years,
We have stores which have been there for 7 years now.
Improved biomass stoves?
Yes, yes.
7, 2, another one, institutional? Yes?
I was at 10. 10 years.
10, okay. Here? You want to dispute it? There's a dispute. You'll tell us which stores the ones are. And any other institutional? Anyone do you having an idea on institutional improved biomass stoves? Yes?
For institution, they can go for more than 10 years, so long as, but with minimal repairs.
Okay. Okay. This is interesting. So number one, remember we talked about thermal efficiency tests, right? Whereby we must know how efficient your stove is. So your stove must go undergo some specific tests to see how efficient it is in terms of it having being used for cooking. That same test will tell us what is the estimated lifespan of the device. Why is this important? And I'll give the example of the one you have told me 2 years. If you're doing this carbon project and one crediting period is 5 years and your stove is going for 2 years, how do you get your credits? There's a problem. So the options to you will be either you go back to the research and design to see if you can get to 5 years. Alternatively, be able to explain what is to happen to a household that's part of a carbon project, but the stove can only go for 2 years. Will your project give them another stove or not? That's usually what the scenario. Most stoves I know for improved stoves, they say 5, 6 there. And if they want to go beyond it, they have to show how are you able to either repair or replace. Now, of course, there's a cost implication to that. Are you going to tell the household to buy it again or not? Those are some of the circumstances. So if a stove can go for 7 years, well and good. But if it's less than 5 years, then that's some of the problems we need to think through. Do we go back to do some R&D, you get the lifespan extended, or do we go to the financing and see how can we make sure we're always replacing? Those are some of the harsh realities we have to be very aware of. I hope you're all together, right? Question?
Thank you so much. I don't know whether I missed it, but are you saying that for a stove to qualify for carbon credits should at least last 5 years, or the credit starts getting after 5 years? Yeah.
Yes or no? What I'm saying is this. A crediting period is 5 years. You want to do a clean cooking project, the gold standard, the first crediting period is 5 years. The question then is, what is the device lifespan of your cook stove? If it's less than 5 years, then the question that you have to answer is this. If it's 2 years in its case, if you cannot provide a way within which you can either increase your device lifespan or show how you'll be replacing when a device comes with end of use, then you'll only get your credits for 2 years. So it's up to you. You go back to the board, get the device to at least have the 5 years minimum, 6 ideally because you're looking at 5 years, or stick to 2 years and find a way within which from the beginning of year 3, that household gets a replacement. And it will be verified by the auditors. Are you together? So because the idea is we want, when you're doing such kind of climate mitigation activities, to have at least 5 years of doing it. But if it's less than the 5 years, then you'll only get for 2 years, which again will be counterproductive if you think about it. That's what the recommendation, either see if you can get the lifespan extended, or can you look at how the finances will be for it to be replacing. Those decisions are tough. We'll have to look at it from a financial model perspective. Okay? For those are 7 years and more, well and good, so long as now the different lab tests can show that, well and good. If not, yeah, I think there's a question back there. Hope I've answered, though? Okay.
Thank you. I have a question.
regarding the heat, because you said there are two options. Either one uses the metering or the other traditional method of documentation. So, and on metering, you said you install a device on which the stove, like, actually the device to pick the heat. And now my question is the stove that generates more heat more efficient? Because from what I know, firepower is actually contrary to efficiency. So in your opinion, or in the technical language, how can you like demonstrate to us that if, for example, a heatometer or something that can pick heat, if the stove generates a lot of heat, is efficient, or it would generate more credits versus the firepower and the efficiency, because that's why there's a contradiction.
Thank you. Measuring the heat is not to determine the credits. It's just to be able to see how much energy is being used for a cooking event. Remember, the stove underwent an efficiency test. And just to reiterate for those who might not there in the morning, when you're doing an efficiency test, energy efficiency test, we look at two scenarios. Scenario one is how much energy and time is required to cook this bucket of meals using, let's say, the 3 stone and firewood. And then we compare with the stove that is coming into mind. In this case, it could be the improved biomass stove, LPG or otherwise. And then we see what is the corresponding time and energy used for this project stove in compared to the same amount of food together. And now the specific formulas you're using, especially under TBD Tech, that allows us to compute the amount of credits being generated together. But the goal here in clean cooking is this: for the same amount of food, use less energy. Together. Same amount of food, but less energy. Because less energy because you're more efficient in the cooking. Am I there?
So the question is, would we prefer a stove that cooks for a longer time but uses little fuel, or a stove that has really good firepower, that cooks very fast?
Shorter time, less energy. Have I answered you? Or am I not getting the question? Efficiency. It's on time and energy.
Like, I would just like to raise a small query. Is it really longevity versus the kilojoule energy? Because what I've seen in same type of gasifier pellet stoves, when they use different qualities of pellets, one can have a longer burning time, but the another one will get finished faster, but it will also cook your meals faster. So I think it's not all about the cooking technique, it's all also including the fuels that we are using. That's what I believe, because someone was using 2 different types of pellets made from completely different types of raw material. One was getting finished faster, but it was also cooking the food faster compared to the other one. Thank you.
Okay. Somebody else here?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add something on to what Mr. Simwe has raised. I used to test cook stoves in the lab, and I happen to have worked on some carbon credits before, especially using the SAMs, the stove use monitoring systems. But I think for me, in regards to this, really, it's not about which stove cooks faster or which stove generates a high amount of heat, because what matters most is the efficiency of the stove. Okay? And I think for the credits to be given, you have to start with how much fuel does your stove save. Okay? How many trees are saved when someone is using this cook stove? And then it is from that you derive the calculations on how much credits the stove should get. And then the stove use monitoring system. I don't know, you mentioned something about stoves that won't use, that are not metered. I don't know how that works. But the stove use monitoring system would now help you to realize, is this stove being used? Is it used on a daily? How much is it used? To some extent, you could say, like, for example, if you want to earn carbon credits, you could go to households and say, you know what, when a certain time reaches, just light your stove. The device will pick up the heat. But the good thing with these meters, they can be monitored. The data can be downloaded and the trends can be followed to see if this stove is actually being used normally. I don't know whether I've helped to contribute something on your question. Yeah, but at least that's some of the ideas that I have about this.
As the mic goes, I've also have a hand from Siraj online. Siraj, please unmute your mic and go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. Consultant. Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too.
Siraj?
Can you hear me? Can I proceed? Okay. All right. So I just want to take
Siraj,
it on from
we can't hear you from
my...
our speaker. I'm coming back to you in a few. There. I'm coming back to you in a few. A mic there? Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I can
Thank
hear
you very much. I just want to be guided on true issues. Yes, you're talking about monitoring the cook stove, but I want to find out and understand whether we have a regulatory framework on how this data will be collected, who collects it, and who reports to who then. Because many times this has happened that things come on board, but we fail to capture the information into the national database and how to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, I wanted to add in what he said, and then the question that he asked, because when you look at different types of biomass, for example, the pellets, if they're produced using different types of wood, for example, they could be having different types of, different amount of carbon content in them. So now that also affects, because I mean, if you, for example, if one gets to produce pellets using bamboo, and the other gets to produce pellets using eucalyptus trees, these ones, both of them do have different amounts of carbon content in them. That means that if you have your cook stove, despite the efficiency of that cook stove, the amount of carbon in the kind of pellets or briquettes that you use also have an impact on both the time it takes for you to prepare your food and how much fuel it takes for you to use.
Thank you. Ready? Siraj, go ahead. Siraj, go ahead. If you can hear me,
Thanks so
please
much,
go ahead.
Consultant. Yes, can you hear me now? You can hear me very well. Can I proceed?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Proceed.
All right. So I just want to take it on from my colleague who does pellets from Gayaza. I think I tend to see the discussion that is quite bending on Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, colleague,
Okay.
yes.
So I wanted to
from that
twist it a
point.
bit and we start thinking about briquettes. I personally do carbonized briquettes, and the discussions around carbon emissions, this is something that I really look at. How much emissions am I actually regulating? How am I cleaning the air that is joining the rest of the air for everyone to use? And I don't see the conversation touching base into that, because if we are touching at the efficiencies of cook stoves and yet we are not really touching how well we are producing the fuels, then we could be true saving how many trees, but polluting the environment with a lot of emissions. I will tell you that cleaner fuels, we end up tapping the smoke and generating byproducts such as coal tar, for example. And I have quite a lot of it. But I'm just assuming if all that went into the environment, it would be hell. Now, while we are discussing the issues around efficiencies in cook stoves and how we can generate carbon credits out of them, I think, and I don't know whether later this discussion will lead us into that kind of discussion where we are looking at how well are we producing the fuels, because it's very, very critical. We cannot discuss the technology and then we completely don't touch the fuels. And Mr. Consultant, I think this is something that we have not really touched on very well. And I've seen lots of initiatives, lots of incentives being moved into the areas of the technology and forgetting anything to do with the fuel. So I think we need to concentrate and see the longevity of burning. What does that one mean in terms of the relationship with an efficient cook stove? Today, I produce carbonized briquettes, which are universal across all cook stoves. And of course, in line with our targets for 2030, I want, at least if someone is not using an efficient cook stove, but let them at least use an efficient fuel that is not cutting trees, that is not using charcoal, so that we are hitting the problems in either directions. So my it's really a comment, it's really a concern. It's not really more of a question, but it's really a concern on what should be the real focus area. Should the real focus area be an efficient cook stove, or maybe not even a priority that should be a cook stove, or maybe we should actually tackle both of them at the same time? Do we look at the universalization of a fuel? Do we look at the longevity in burning? Do we look at how much emissions does a cook stove emit? Because that's also another point that we shall really look at seriously. If a fuel is not emitting emissions into the environment, what does that one mean in terms of carbon credits? What does that one mean in terms of the relationship with the cook stove? In my view, I would love to hear more of how does a cook stove efficiently get used with an efficient fuel. Right now, what I'm hearing in isolation is how do I use an efficient cook stove to save the available biomass? For example, how many trees will I have saved if I use this cook stove? But at the end of the day, we are saying that instead of using 10 trees, let me use 2 because I'm using an efficient cook stove. Good initiative. But I think where we are headed right now should be, if I use an efficient cook stove, how well can you produce an efficient fuel, like a briquette, like the pellets? How much energy, how much technology should I put behind the production of an efficient cooking fuel, like pellets, like briquettes, in order to bring out the real output that we really want out of this program? Consultant, sorry, I can divert off a bit, but that was my take on this whole discussion. And I don't know whether in future, today you have something that touches base onto those relationships, or an area which will really tackle the aspect of the biofuels. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comment before I respond to all questions? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, our consultant. Chelsea is my name. Now, what I want to talk about is kind of comment of the caloric value. Let's look at the briquettes where he has talked a lot. He's a bricketter. We have briquettes. I've been supplying briquettes for some good years. We have briquettes made from coffee husks, and we have briquettes of bagasse. I'm talking about non-carbonized briquettes. When it comes to lighting, when you are lighting, a briquette of coffee husks takes long to catch fire. Yes, I think the bricketter can testify to that. When it comes to that of maybe rice husks, it catches fire quickly, but it burns for shorter time. You are aware of that. Now, the caloric value in coffee husks briquettes is higher than that of coffee husks, rice husks briquettes. The same applies the one of bagasse. When it comes to the market, when you go to the market, I'm sure briquettes of bagasse are cheaper. Am I right? They're cheaper than that of coffee husks, just because they burn for shorter time. And again, after burning, when you go to the production of tar, do you know tar? Bagasse has also a lot of tar. Now, my question is there. Are we going to look at the after effect of the fuels or not? Thank you.
Okay, let me, one last thing, allow me to respond and take more.
I just want to add a comment to what you have said. For those who are manufacturing briquettes and pellets, UNBS has a standard on briquettes. So you can go to the UNBS standard website and then get that standard. So when you get to follow that standard, you get to know a lot more about what is concerned about producing sustainable briquettes and producing it in a way which is more better. Because just like the way you said, most of these people who produce some of these briquettes and pellets, they don't know how to use the right raw materials for them. That's why at the end of the day, someone ends up using a binder which is not right. So that binder ends up affecting both the time it takes for that briquettes to light up and how long it takes to burn. So if you check on the UNBS website and then you get that standard, you're able to produce a much more sustainable briquette or pellet.
Maybe our commissioner will also inform us a bit. Because when he went through UNBS, I remember back those days, like 5 years back, better, as we artisans, we came up with a stove which was better than the standards of UNBS. You remember that? We produced a stove which was better than what the records had. I don't know whether Madam Justin will inform us. Maybe now, maybe you have updated or upgraded, but we had something better than what they have in records or at UNBS. Thank you.
Okay, so let me try and give feedback to the various questions and comments made. So there's a question on data collection, protection, and management. So this is the reality. So what the ministry is trying to do is to set up a platform within which people interested in supporting clean transition by way of improved biomass can be part of the program. So for example, let's say it's your company that's interested in being part of the program. The data collection exercise will be done jointly by you and us as part of this VPA. So the data belongs to you as the principal proponent, but of course we'll be using the data to derive the requisite values for the project. But data essentially belongs to you. But of course, how it's to be handled must be handled as per regulation and by policy. Oh, that one is clear. So you own the data because you are the project proponent, but of course you're working with the ministry for part of this program, so the ministry will still have access to that data because it is the coordinating management entity. I hope I'm clear on that one. Okay, good. So who will collect it? Which data will be collected? Usually it's dependent on now the methodology we're using. There are usually quite a number of data parameters we tend to collect for our business study, and those are some of the specific technical conversations we'll be having with the specific companies that are willing to be part of the ecosystem. So don't worry about the carbon accounting. We shall be working together to tell you these are the data parameters we need. Which tools do we usually use? Sometimes there's the use of Kobo Collect, for example, to just do the enumerators going to the houses and collecting the data. But it's something to be done gently if you're part of this ecosystem. There's also conversation whereby, is it possible for the government to do a national baseline study? If that is then to happen, then it means that baseline studies will not be done at the project level because one has been done at the national level. So therefore, case closed, you just rely on the data and we do the carbon accounting. That is clear. Now, coming to the other conversations on, are you looking at the fuel? Are you looking at the stove efficiency, etc.? Now, let's take a step back. When you're taking the stove for assessments, what are you taking? You're taking the stove and saying, this is my stove. Of course, the first question will be, what is used to power or fuel your stove? You'll say my stove can run on pellets, for example, or whatever, briquettes. and what is the component of those pellets or briquettes. Because the efficiency test is being done on the specific fuel you are using on. Why? Because I can't call your name, but because different pellets or briquettes, because of the different carbon content, of course the heat output will be different, and therefore the net impact of your cook stove and the fuel, of course, for cooking will be different. Are you together? So when you're doing the testing, you'll see if your stove can run on firewood, your stove can run on briquettes, can run on pellets of different feedstock material, the test will be able to show that. And that one is the one now we'll be using when you're doing our carbon calculations. I hope that point is clear. Yes? So yes, the device efficiency is important, so as is the fuel. And when you're doing the thermal efficiency test, it's being tested on which fuel is your stove running. Charcoal, firewood, briquettes made from what, pellets made from what. Are we together? Okay. Similarly, I think mostly on Siraj, and we'll be coming to the point where we are showing how we do the carbon calculations. And there you'll see, like I mentioned in the previous session, that before, clean cooking projects only focused on how much emissions reduction are we doing. But that's the stories of the past. Now we're looking at the emissions used in manufacturing the stove, the emissions on account of you deploying your stove, or even where are people getting the fuel for your stove. Now, there's one particular factor we shall look at for the case of improved biomass stoves, because even though there is a promotion of using biomass stoves for cooking, but of course the ambition is beyond that. The ambition is for this household and institutions to go beyond, let's say, biomass cooking and to other cleaner or, let's say, cleaner fuels. Now, there's a component that was introduced by the carbon standard. It's called a downward adjustment factor, whereby we're looking at the downward adjustment factor in comparison to the ambition of the country, and so there's a factor that will be multiplied against your carbon credit calculation if you're doing improved biomass stores. Because just like even LPG, in as much as LPG is being seen as a transitional fuel, you don't want to lock in a household to be using LPG because it's not the cleanest of the cleanest. Because clean cooking, the ultimate ambition is cleanest fuel, which is electricity, assuming the grid is entirely clean. But for those who are doing transitions, the credits still have to be compared to the ambition of the country towards getting their clean. And those calculations will just show them, but for those who will be part of the program, we'll be working together to show you how exactly the calculations are done. The idea here is scale transition, but not to lock in somebody somewhere to be all too comfortable, because clean cooking, ultimately, we want to use the cleanness of the clean energy, whatever that is. Together. So the other calculations, that is Siraj, other calculations, other subtractions we'll be using to come down to the carbon credits per stove. Dozens will always be there, and we'll be looking at that. I hope I've summarized some of the comments and I've responded to everyone. If not, happy to reiterate. But we'll get to a place where we're looking at the different calculations and how we do the subtractions. Yes.
That's the cook stove that uses the carbonized briquettes. The carbonized briquettes are now regarded as renewable fuels. How much, what would be the carbon credit difference, for instance? Would I be able to generate, 5 credits on the one which is using charcoal and carbonized briquettes versus one that is just using purely charcoal, if the efficiency is the same?
There's a ratio, wood to charcoal ratio, that is often used. Was the charcoal made from fired locally collected or from?
Yes, let's assume in our case in Uganda, most of the charcoal is gotten from people's private farms, mostly. And then the briquettes, the current briquettes are gotten from private companies. You'll confirm with me. A lot of charcoal dust, which is then briquetted, or else agro residue, which is then briquetted. If Siraj can confirm that for me. Yeah. Somebody in the room.
Yeah, Justin, you're right. You're right on that. So the majority of the briquettes are being
submission. He mentioned something that caught my attention, and this goes to the fuel manufacturers, especially pellets and briquettes, because before carbon credits were almost on the end product. The technology like the stove. So now, as a briquettes manufacturer, how does someone now earn credits? For me, I do not provide the technology to burn the fuel that I'm producing, but I have a very efficient briquette. But then again, or pellets. But again, we need to know that for a pellet to be very efficient, the stove that it is being used on also has to be quite efficient, because I could be saving more emissions on a certain device, but then again, my pellets at the end of the day can be used on another device that may not be so efficient. So if I'm a manufacturer of briquettes, for example, I'm Siraj, and I have my briquettes, I make 10 tons a month. How do I earn from that without being at the end of the cycle? I don't know whether you get my point clearly.
I want you to answer this question briefly, but a gentleman there asked the commission. I want, before we can take some other questions, since the representative is here, responds to the gentleman who said something about UNBS. I would have answered, but
Charles, thank you very much for that question. So when we develop standards, we develop a minimum performance requirement. So we set the minimum. So typically what we want in the market is anything starting from the minimum and above. So if your cook stove was above, that is exactly what we wanted. Yeah, so however, when we set the thresholds we put in the biomass cook stove, it varies from charcoal and firewood, but I'll go back and check the minimums. So even when we're enforcing, for us, we are looking for those who are not meeting our minimum. And for those who are meeting the minimum, we really want to encourage them and support them to even innovate and outperform our standard. Yeah.
Now, so I'm trying to get a good response between if the stove has the same efficiency and you're looking at charcoal, firewood, and carbonized briquettes, who will give you more credits? Tricky. Yeah?
Sorry, let me just ambush a little bit of this session. So sorry. So when you come and look at the actual production of these fuels, then you will appreciate exactly who should be, having a real discussion around carbon credits. Because when you look at, Justin, you want me to continue? Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. So I'm looking at in the informal settlements where they are using these metallic charcoal cook stoves. Now I'm making the decision as a carbon developer. Should I go and give them efficient charcoal cook stoves at an efficiency of 40%? These cook stoves will use charcoal as a fuel. Or should I give them these efficient cook stoves again with briquettes? So the efficiency will also be 40%, but now it will have briquettes as a fuel. So will I have any additional carbon revenue coming from displacing the charcoal by introducing briquettes? Thank you.
I stand to be corrected, but carbonized briquettes have got more heat output. Are likely to be, if they use the stove the same efficiency. Yes. So you're comparing charcoal stove and now using carbonized briquettes, the same stove. I'd say the carbonized briquettes will give you more credits because it should be more efficient if you're displacing firewood.
Yes, if you're displacing firewood.
Yes.
But for charcoal, the calorific values are similar. Sometimes the calorific values for carbonized briquettes versus charcoal are very similar. Sometimes even depending on the feedstock and also the mixture, sometimes they mix a lot of cassava flour. Depending on the mixture, sometimes the calorific value might reduce. So that's the scenario.
Huh? Okay, for that one, I think we'll have to go on case by case.
Yeah, the reason as to why I was asking was I wanted to know if those who now produce the fuels can then also maybe potentially also, consider collecting some carbon revenue from it. Yeah.
Just by a show of hands, how many companies here have an improved biomass stove that has a specific fuel? Just by a show of hands. Three. Okay, 4. So we'll have a session. I just want to get some quick feedback and then to be able to marinate the response later, okay? I just want to know efficiency of your stove, what is the fuel, and if you've got typical numbers of before the transition and after the transition, how much in comparison of fuel in terms of kilograms or tonnage of the fuel you're using. Just something quick, okay, for the sake of today's conversation. Siraj, I think had a comment before we proceed. Siraj, if you can hear me.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment on what Justin had asked. So, in terms of so when you come to the areas where the pellets, rather the briquettes or pellets are being produced, then you would appreciate exactly what we are talking about in terms of saving the environment. So, someone talked about tar, coal tar. So, for my case, when
both on the stove, on the briquettes.
So
both on the stove and on the briquettes.
So when
we are only considering the technology, not the fuel.
Okay, to be very clear, that which is doing the ultimate emissions reduction, usually what you call the carbon asset, and the carbon asset in this case will be the stove. What do I mean? If your business is a business of, let's say, just making the pellets for, let's say, his stove, technically, usually, the credits belong to the person who has the stove, because the stove is what drives the efficiency. However, if his business does not have the pellets value chain, he has to rely on you or somebody else. What we are trying to think through in this consultation is, here you have the government creating the enabling environment. Here we have got the household or the institution that is going to be using these stoves. Here you have got the person with the improved biomass stove, but here you're also part of that story. In the ideal scenario, if it's a private sector play, the credits go to him. End of story. It's then up to him to see how can they share the resources. But what the program is trying to do is have all the players have a stake in those credits, because without one of the players, that story will never be complete. If you don't incentivize the house to transition, they'll buy your stove and never use it. When the auditor comes and asks them, have you been using this thrice a day, 365 days? They say, no, once a week. There goes your credits. If the stove manufacturer does not come into a good framework with the pellet manufacturer, nothing is then to stop him to go to another person to provide the supply for the pellets, and you can sort yourself out. And if the house does not get the pellets for your stove, there is nothing you're getting. So everything is connected. That's why we want to see if we are to come together, the 4 companies coming together, we figure out what is the fuel for your stove. What is the targeted districts for the households, for example? How can we all share the resources? We're all competitors, but there's not. There are 10 million households. There are 10 million households. Yeah? So that's the point. So usually the traditional sense, credits often goes to the owner of the carbon assets. The one who had the intellectual property, the idea to have an efficient store. That's the usual play. Then in most cases you'll find, like I'll give the example of the ones in the country here. I know there's Atmosphere, there's Ban in Kenya, for example. They get the credits and then they share the benefits with the end users, the household, by subsidizing the cost of the stove. And that's where the story ends. You see, that's the usual, that's the reality. Not the charcoal seller or the firewood seller, no. But now for this program, we are trying to see how can we be more inclusive to ensure this transition is holistic and everybody gets something in return. We don't have all the answers. We are not doing a consultation. And we'll talk about the carbon finance revenue split in today's case.
Yes, actually, that's what I wanted to ask you. That as the consultant now, who is actually generating this, working on this model, how is, for example, a person only doing briquettes, not the technology that uses the briquettes, going to benefit? Because for the end user can benefit from the subsidy from the manufacturer. So, for example, the supplier of the fuel, how is that person going to benefit? What is the arrangement for him to make sure he benefits from the program?
So I'll answer the question two ways to make sure I'm very, very clear. If today you came to me and say, I'm a briquettes manufacturer, I want carbon credit, I tell you there are no credits for you because you have no stove. Simple. But now the second response is this different story we are trying to have here. I cannot tell you if you are part of this program, you'll be getting this amount of dollars or UGX part of. No, that's part of the consultation. A call was made by the government, the ministry, on people to come. It's good 4-5 companies are here. Then the next step is will you be part or will you be willing to be part of this VPA? Yes. The next step is you are doing a due diligence. What is the stove efficiency, etc., etc. Does your stove meet the requirements? Yes. Then let's say 3 of you survive that due diligence. Then the 3 of you, what is your distribution plan? How many stoves are you looking at? We put all these numbers into a financial model. Everything has to go into a financial plan, a financial model that says if you have all these stoves, of course we'll calculate the carbon credits per each stove based on the efficiency and everything else. And say you have got 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. That's 30,000. How many credits can be generated from this plan? If you have to monetize it at a particular price, how then do we ensure these credits goes to, of course, the manufacturers, the owners of the stores? How much can go to incentivize the household? That's a financial model. Because you don't want to kill the innovator, but you also don't want to give too little to the household that they say it's not worth the investment. And also don't forget, there's the annual monitoring plan that the ministry is looking to do. There's a cost implication. Yeah, you can't make money on the back of and you know, so that's where now the financial, and that's where now the specific conversation comes in for the specific companies who are willing to walk the journey with the ministry. So here is where we try and present the story. If it's of interest, let's start walking the journey. In the morning, we had the case of bioethanol. Prior, we had the case of some 2-3 companies looking to support now for electric cooking. We had the conversations. And then we'll be having for LPG who's interested, and then the biogas. Are you together? So we don't have the number in terms of how much are you getting, no? That's not part of what we are coming here to do. Okay?
Okay, so I would like to talk about different credits depending on different usages and maybe different supply chain. Like let's take for an example, there are lots of people who are using waste material and they are creating energy efficient fuel from wastage, which is actually discarded. And if it was not used, it would just end up in landfill. And then there is technology like, let's say ethanol, or let's say LPG, or like other things like, so someone has to grow sugarcane or maize to be able to derive that ethanol, or someone has to dig like crude oil and then have to do distillation and then they derive that LPG. So is there any difference in terms of carbon credits when someone uses waste material and creates energy efficient fuel from that, and someone goes through like a food chain or like fossil fuel carbon chains, and then they derive that fuel and then they store it in a canister and then it becomes an energy efficient fuel? So could you just highlight that part of different fuel chains?
Okay. There are different factors affecting the price of carbon credits. One, of course, is the cost of doing the project by itself. There's something we'll cover briefly today in today's conversation is on the co-benefits. What more can you share about your project beyond emissions reduction, saving trees, etc.? Are you enhancing another value chain, for example? Are you doing other waste mitigation activities like the ones you're trying to infer to? Those other, I call them stories, that adds the value of the product. Because now when you're coming to market, you're saying you're not just simply selling a carbon credit as a case of emissions reduction. There are reformed routes, for example, who are part of the hiring that are the ones manufacturing these canisters locally here in Kampala, for example. So all those other attributes, what you call them the social, environmental attributes, especially the social attributes, are what now adds the value of the carbon credits. Okay? Now, if you go to the realm of things on an energy project doing waste to energy, that is slightly different. And for example, if you talked about avoided decomposition, now you come in the realms of avoided methane, which in this case, yes, because you're looking at a methane-based project, which is more difficult to remove, you're likely to get better pricing. Of course, it's more difficult to measure, but yes. But in the case of clean cooking, it's about the other social impact stories you can attach to the project. So the more of those stories, I just like to call them stories because they have a value. So it's how you leverage that to sell to the buyer. I'll use the example of the courier business. You know, these artifacts like beads and whatever. How you sell the story to a tourist will have a different price. So that's what I say. The co-benefits adds the value over and above the cost of doing the project as well.
Okay. Sorry. I wanted to ask, just to take you back when you were talking about the DMRV, and just to understand, is it, in these methodologies, do you have to do 100% DMRV? For example, if you're deploying 100,000 cook stoves, you have to put 100,000 heat sensors, or are we still using some bit of sampling and testing and the old, either KPTs and some sampling of IoT, sorry, not IoT, okay, the DMRV, the sensors, etc., to then give you a better understanding? I just wanted to understand. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so depends the methodology. If your device can be metered easily, in this case mostly it's be electrics, LPGs and maybe biogas, then in the current revision of the first methodology, that is the metered and measured energy cooling devices, for it to be aligned with the Paris Agreement, it's 100% metering. So for those who will be doing e-cooking, EPCs, inductions, and whatnot, and they're looking at using the MSD methodology, it's 100% stove metering. Okay? Now, for improved biomass, my recommendation will be we look at the other two methodologies, that is TPD Tech and for clear methodology. In each case, we'll be doing a representative sampling of stove usage monitoring. So it will not be 100%, but it must be a representative of how many have been deployed in the houses. And it's not usually for the entire year, it's usually a couple of days. Previously, it was about 1 day. Guys are talking about 7 days. The idea is we need to understand what is the cooking pattern of a house in, let's say, Mbale district. And once you do that representative sampling, it will be representing all the Mbale households in Mbale districts, but it's not all of them. So for these two methodologies, TPD Tech and Clear for improved biomass, it's not 100%, but for e-cooking, that is 100%. 100%. Yeah. Okay? So, okay, any question, comments? Online, you're good? Fine, so, okay.
Just to ensure that I have understood this clearly, is that for a fuel producer or manufacturer, for you to benefit from carbon credits, you need to work with someone that sells a device. That's it. Simple as that.
Look, I know it sounds harsh. I know it sounds harsh, but look, the fuel by itself cannot use itself, can it? So what is really driving the energy efficiency? What is making that fuel be really living out its purpose? It's the stove. That's what I'm saying. You have a particular person whom you provide fuel for their stoves, right? And you know maybe how you really hold the business here, right? Now that's what I'm saying. This is where now we have to have those conversations. I'm helping you so as you can help others, right? So it's just frank conversations to see how can we all share this small cake here.
Can I suggest something for the future? That we look at it in a way that we can separate two people. Because, yes, you can form a partnership where I sell fuel to your, stove users, but at the end of the day, it may not be very done in a professional way. You know how we are in Africa, how we do not like to work together so much, that you can still monitor how much fuel I put on the market. Looking at my records of sales, looking at how much I'm selling. If I'm putting out 10,000 tons of fuel every week and the trends are there, how can we ensure that we can use such data to still be able to generate credit separately, independent from the stove sellers or manufacturers? I don't know whether it makes sense, but...
It makes sense, but for me, I'm looking at the carbon accounting. The carbon accounting comes down to the stove. The fuel is an extra component. Because you see, one will then ask, do you share profits with the people who give you the feedstock for the fuel? Not necessarily.
You sell, you buy from them.
So even for them, you buy, right? You see, so it's the same thing. I'll give you another example. If today you are the manufacturer of a stove, and the two of them are your distributors, not unless they have a document that you waive the carbon rights to them, they can't get the carbon credits. They're just distributors. Exactly. And the same way, you as the fuel provider, you're simply benefiting with the ecosystem I've built for you to sell your fuel. And that's why that is the usual story. But now what we are trying to do is see how can we try and involve more people and see how the benefits can cut across. Of course, it will not be the same benefit, but that is the thinking we are trying to see. But in the actual reality is stove. I'm the owner of the intellectual property. I'm the manufacturer. It's my credits. If I give it to you to distribute, you're just a distributor. The credits belong to me. That's the reality. But that's the story we are trying to see. Can we do something slightly differently? In the morning, there's one manufacturer who confirmed then that the manufacturer from wherever it is has given them the rights of the credits because they gave them the ideas of the stove, they manufactured from their behalf, and they said the credits belong to you, not me, the manufacturer. Those are the conversations we are willing to support. That's what we actually told the person, go and get that waiver from your manufacturer, and they've gotten. So that's what you're trying to really see, how can these benefits be given. So as we make sure when the credits are coming out, the household incentivized, the stove manufacturer incentivized to make it more affordable, and also we see from the value chain for the fuel, how can that also be supported. We don't have all the numbers and the answers because we are now doing the consultation. But the harsh reality, the traditional sense of the way is owner of the stove in terms of intellectual property, they own the credits. Okay? But now the regulation says, the Ghana regulation says, clause 18, the carbon project developer must come up with a benefit sharing plan that will be assessed by the designated national authority, who is now the Minister of Environment and Water, and of course, the Minister of Energy. So those are the realities, but can we have a better story so more people can benefit from this thing we are calling carbon credits? That is now why we are trying to consult here. Yeah? Because that's what you want as the provider. I'm assuming you're a fuel provider. Okay, okay. But then the reality is, we also have to listen to the stove manufacturers, Champion, yes. Because the stove manufacturer will tell you, I also incur a cost of marketing and distribution to allow this guy to sell the fuel. So you see, all those things, we want to get those people to first of all come, then we sit and start working out those integrity. Question and then question.
I will talk from experience and as a person who produces briquettes, though I also produce stoves. There are some technologies, for example, on the side of fuels. For example, the honeycomb briquettes, even if you get stones, I would say 3 firestones, you get to like bricks, you put them here, and then you light your honeycomb. Still, it will burn better than somebody who has put in a stove with charcoal. You can agree or disagree, but that's the fact. and it will even burn better and more because it is accessing more oxygen, but it also burn longer. Charcoal, ordinary charcoal, or what we would call loose charcoal or charcoal from trees, burns for 45 minutes before you shake. The honeycomb, a quality one, I'm talking of a quality briquette, like from Jossa, it will burn for 6 hours. Good heat. So why can't the person producing briquettes, for example, that type, also benefit? Or it's because the technology was not considered so much, like how we engaged the UNBS some time back. And they were like, you see, they are failing to help us modify the standard because it's, that it was not adopted by very many people. But now many people have come to it. So for us, we said, we decided we sell. But now, I think it's now time to align. So I think the same, now that we're in engagement, I think that you need to note that, so that in next cycle maybe, even if it's left out, so that it's captured, it's noted that that fuels also need to be considered separate for carbon.
And I fully agree from not a carbon accounting perspective, because my carbon accounting will tell me no. But the reality is, providers of efficient fuels play a critical role in the transition. That's a fair thing. And I think that's part of the conversations we'll be taking away from there, whereby how can we bring fuel, the providers of the fuel on the table. I can't promise anything because my carbon accounting says no, you know, but yes, that is something definitely we can take it up. The means to see how can you bring on board to this conversation, okay? But strictly from a carbon accounting, okay? That's just how the accounting goes, yes.
I do have 2 comments. My first comment is about how do the manufacturers of briquettes and pellets get to benefit from this. One, I would say that they would benefit from increased demand for their products. And the reason why I say this is because if you're producing high quality briquettes and pellets, you can be able to price them highly. And because you're pricing them highly, people who manufacture these cook stoves, these improved cook stoves, they will be able to buy them, because remember, this is the fuel that they get to use to power up their cook stoves. So it means that if you have these high quality briquettes and pellets which are priced highly, people on the other side of the ecosystem are going to buy them. That you get directly benefit. And then the other way is that the gold standard has a new methodology on decentralized emissions reductions from decentralized solid waste processing. It's not under clean cooking, but you as the person who's producing pellets and briquettes, you can look at that methodology, and you produce you develop a carbon credit strictly based on that methodology. And that methodology is all about you transforming waste into briquettes and pellets. And then on this other side of the ecosystem, you have these manufacturers of these improved cook stoves, and then that you can be able to sell to them. So I think that's something that people can be able to explore as well, because under clean cooking, there's no direct pathway from which manufacturers of briquettes and pellets can be able to benefit. But then when you look at these other ways of producing high quality briquettes and pricing them highly, we're also developing a unique carbon credit project from processing solid waste.
Thank you.
Would that be the reason as to why Safi Sana, I think it's Safi? No, EcoSafi, sorry. Could that be the reason as why EcoSafi then is having those high value carbon credits at about $35, $38? Because I think they also factored in the fact that this bagasse is coming from this, it's industrial waste. It was already, creating that issue. Then when they added, how they are turning that nuisance now to a value, displacing charcoal, then the additional credits from the use of the technology. I think maybe that could have contributed to the high value that they were getting on their credits. I don't know. Yeah.
In principle, it's because of the DMRV. They could actually show how much is being burnt, because bigger problem has been overcrediting. People just overcredit. You hear the amount of credits a stove is getting from a household, it's just ridiculous. But for them, they're very conservative with that. But just to, okay, microphone there, just to also, to just give more color to what gentleman was saying is that there are different kinds of carbon projects. Clean cooking is one of like 170 different types of clean cook projects. I can tell you the guys in Tanzania who are getting credits from black soldier fly, for example. Yes, because so long as you're doing something that is reducing the amount of emissions atmosphere, we can quantify it. But in this value chain for clean cooking, no. If you're looking about methane avoidance or waste to energy projects, yes. Okay, but for this one, clean cooking, no for now. Yeah, but these are something you can talk after tea for those with an interest. But for this conversation, from a carbon accounting perspective, that is the reality. But yes.
Thank you very much. When look at it from the LPG perspective, who takes the credits? Because the gas comes from Middle East, wherever it is. Then there's somebody who has the cylinder. Then you have the burner. And then what do you call that? What is the technical word for the lock? The one that you put onto the one you hook onto the burner. How can that work for this?
I'm tempted to say we wait for Tuesday because that's LPG. But I'll give you the direct answer to this one. So the direct answer is the reality is this. From where I come from, an LPG cylinder can take gas from anyone. True. An LPG cooker or the two-burner cooker can take LPG from anyone. So what does the emissions reduction in principle? Because if any LPG can work, that is, you have neutralized that. Because I don't want to get into conversation that LPG from this company is better than this other company. That is just marketing story. Yeah, I'm talking about the net calculated value. LPG is LPG. Okay. But what then really gives us the guarantee on the efficient use of the LPG? It comes down to the stove itself, the LPG stove. But more importantly, the meter that is able to do that assessment. We have one such project, I think you guys are familiar with it's M-Gas, done by Circle Gas. It's based in Kenya. It's been pretty successful. And that one is on that stove and the meter itself. Okay? Of course, they provide the gas, but you can really use any gas. But that is the unique thing about the project, and that's where the carbon credits are issued against. Okay? Yeah? But more on LPG on Tuesday. Yeah, there are a number of things we have to, there are a bit of dancing we'll do about the realities there, but I'll prefer more on that on Tuesday or after this, after you conclude this session. But the reality is, it still comes down to the carbon asset being the stove, and that element is doing the assessment, not really just the gas itself. Yeah, because the gas in a bullet tank can't do much if it cannot be used, right? So what is being used to, how initially it's used, it's the stove. Yeah. So hoping everything is okay. Or question, yes.
So my question is about, like, as per my personal research, whoever is doing carbon credit project with pellets or anything, most of the companies, one who are doing the project, they are the owner of the stove. So now here, are we talking about the same thing, or we can sell the stove and we can be generating carbon credits?
For me to be very clear, the first conversation are the stove manufacturers, the ones who are manufacturing and selling.
So we do make stoves, we do make pellets. But now the question is, we are planning to sell the stoves. We are not trying to hold it as our property. Yet Ecosafi or there are other companies around the world who just go to the institution or house, they give them the stove. Let's say Ecosafi, it's on rent, it's not sold. However money you show, they are not going to give you the stove. Yet we are thinking to sell the stove and then sell them the pellets. So now in this case, can we make carbon credit? So it's going to be for the customer.
One, carbon project cannot be designed at a household level. The economics won't make sense. One, even at the institution level. One. So there are other cook stove projects in the country here. Atmosphere, Up Energy, burn across the border. Yeah. Whether they give them on lease, whether you do pay-go, whether you buy it completely, The underlying fact is this, that these companies are the owners of the intellectual property. So just because it's like Android or what do you call this? Samsung, this other one, Apple, iPhone. You bought it. Do you own the intellectual property? No. It's still owned by Apple. The same thing with the stove. That's why the credits usually are anchored there. However, for some of them are smart enough to know either the stove is too expensive, so I'll give you on a pay-go or a lease. And then I see how I can give you something small to keep using it. In e-cooking, that's the easiest way. We give tokens to keep on using electricity to cook with it. Others, they say, will subsidize the price. Like I know Kunyokoa, where it will have been going for about $50, is going for $20 and say that 30 was a subsidy from carbon finance. So at the end of the day, that credit is anchored at the stove. Whether it's going to be on lease, pay-go, it's on the stove. So it's now for you to see, if you really want to ensure people are always using your stove and your fuel, how do I incentivize this household? Now that's where the market engineers has to come in. Because when you say in the reporting that people are using your stove for 365 days, an independent auditor who's not Vast Carbon, who's not the ministry, most likely not from the continent, will come and do an audit and ask them, how many times do you use this stove in a given year? You use it once a week, so that's 52 days. You are saying 365. So you must make sure that household is incentivized enough. Okay? So that's how it happens. Hoping you're okay. Please put more questions and comments on this. I know you might have not been able to give solutions, but as you're presenting some solution coming to your mind, please put it in those forms. We are targeting both household and institutions. Are there any schools in the house? Any schools? Yes? So you're not left out, you're part of this conversation. Okay? And I'm sure, and I hope you have come across some of these institutional level improved biomass stoves that can still get credit to the school. But the story is the same. We have to aggregate the schools together. We shall look at the numbers for credits being done for a school of 200. You see, yeah, you can get the credits, but the numbers are not enough for you to monetize and cover the cost of carbon accounting. But we can always bunch up together. For example, if your school's in Kampala district, you can say all the school Kampala districts you can improve biomass stores, we come into one bucket. Schools in Bale district doing improved biomass stores come into one bucket within the ministry's guidance. That's the proposition. We have insourced the schools. You focus in making sure the chefs, the cooks are using the improved biomass stoves. Your learners are learning and are being fed, and then the ministry and us are supporting and helping you in doing the carbon accounting. Okay, that is now the proposition being made, including the local governments. That's the same thing we are trying to say. Group, help us in aggregate and tap into carbon finance. And to be very clear to everyone, carbon finance did not start last year or this year. Carbon projects have been there since the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, about 3 decades late, but better late than never. Okay? That is the reality. So guys have been leveraging carbon finance as a business. Nothing stops you from being part of that conversation. The only difference now is you have a big brother or big sister in the name of the ministry saying, we are willing to help in coordinate this transaction for improved biomass. Are you together? Carbon markets have been there, and they're continuing. Together. So household institutions are both part of the ecosystems that we are targeting. I want to go into what I was talking about, the co-benefits. What other story can we share about your project? We are very clear that when you're looking at emissions reduction, it's climate action, SDG number 13. Okay? And I've heard that there's some pellets that have got the more productive or more useful than others. So if we're able to quantify that, you can talk about provision of affordable and clean energy for cooking. Are you together? There's an SDG on sustainable waste management of consumption or something. We can leverage that if you're looking at the case of where I'm saying, my stove is using pellets made from this kind of waste. The idea here is this. The more of these SDG goals that we can assign to the project or the stove and be able to validate and provide that evidence, it adds the story of the co-benefits to your clean cooking project. So for this clean cooking program, you're looking at SDG 13 and also the one on affordable and clean energy. And of course, if you're able to quantify that the harmful smoke in the house was able to decrease from transitioning from 3-stone firewood to improve biomass pellet stove, we can talk about the good health at the household and the institutional level, especially the institutional level. We have got air quality monitor that can measure a particle called particulate matter 2.5, which is very, very harmful. So if you can document that, you can always talk about your project also tackling SDG 13. I talked about providing employment opportunities for marginalized groups and communities, be it reform youths, be it women. If you're able to show the story that your project is also enhancing gender equality in one or the other, we can also tap into that. The more SDG goals you can tap into and of course be validated and prove it, it adds to this particular story we're trying to build. And of course, we can always easily quantify how many trees have been saved by you transitioning houses to be using your biomass gasifier store that's running on pellets, for example. Because in the baseline study, we will know how many trees are being chopped down in Barara district, and now after the transition into your pellet stove, okay? And quantify that firewood in terms of trees, for example. It's very easy for us to do that. And then, because you're scaling, you used to do 1,000 stores because of challenges of finance. But now you have bought the story of carbon finance, you're looking at 10,000 stores. Are you creating more jobs? Yes. Can we show that from payrolls, etc.? Yes. Then we can say that then your project also is able to provide decent work and economic growth. Are you together? So the more SDG goals you're able to tackle, you are always able to leverage on that. The PowerPoint slide is available within the project documents. Just make sure you click there. And I want to cover one more section before I go to another round of questions, is on safeguarding principle. And this is very, very important. At no point in time should you interpret that because you're working with the government through the Ministry of Energy in supporting clean cooking, which is an ambition of the government, that it gives you a right to infringe the rights of others. At no point in time should you ever have such an interpretation. Okay? We are not going to force people to start cooking with pellets. No, 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 no. You go sell your stove, convince the household, but you must adhere to principles of human rights at all points in time. If your project can support women's empowerment, that's one of the safeguarding principles that the gold standard is also very keen about. What about community health and safety? The last thing we want is that your stove is saying it's reducing firewood consumption, reducing emissions, but at the same time, it's still having a lot of emissions, providing no net difference in terms of health benefits to the community. That's the last thing you want. So you have to make sure at every point in time as you're doing our project, we are looking out for the community's health and safety. We are not going to go to indigenous communities and force them to change their ways of cooking in the name of you getting carbon credits. Please, sell your agenda. If your agenda cannot be captured, then you didn't do a good job, okay? But you have to safeguard the cultural heritage and indigenous people. I know you've all heard of the different initiatives that the ministry is doing with development partners, like Mexico and the rest, within the refugee settlements, yes? That is important because there is no restriction to who is allowed to do clean cooking within the Republic. So long as within the physical boundaries of the Republic, you can do this clean cooking project. Are you together? Be it a person or a community. The only thing I want to make it very clear is this. We know that there are households within the farthest extreme of the borders around the country, right? Either bordering Kenya, bordering South Sudan, yeah, and the rest. I want to be very clear on this. We know that scenario, right? There are houses that are bordering Kenya, South Sudan, and so forth, correct? There is no restriction to doing a clean cooking project of a household within the Republic of Uganda, the boundaries. But should that household move away from the confines of the Republic of Uganda and move to Kenya, that clean cooking initiative cannot be accounted in Uganda because the project boundary is Uganda. I'm not saying don't allow Kenyans living in Uganda not to be part of the project. No, I'm saying if the stove moves across the border, it cannot be accounted in the program. Am I making sense? But the project is open to anyone, be it refugee communities and so forth. Okay? Point on corruption, I'll be very quick on this. Nothing in this program should imply that you are exempted from your other obligations as a business. Okay? So if you have to do your taxes, do your taxes. Okay? Because one of the principles that the carbon standard is very keen on is the principles of corruption, and you can never avoid that. We are also hoping that there'll be an overall economic impact being seen in the project. And the last one I want to really touch on was on land use, and I want to piggyback to what I think Siraj was saying, that if you're able to come up with a sustainable fuel for these improved biomass stoves like pellets and whatnot, save the trees. I think that makes sense, right? I know there are people who talk about having woodlots of bamboo to grow bamboo. It's not a tree, it's a grass, but still it's woody. And then you chop the bamboo for fuel for other projects, yeah? That's not really sustainable land use. And you just have to think through some of these things. Am I making sense? So sustainable land use is very, very important. Before I go to the last section on carbon rights and benefit sharing, any questions on the safeguarding principles? Oh, we all good? I hope you are together back there. We are discussing on how we are going to come to Christmas and sign up. How that's the conversation? Because that's why we are here. We are looking for partners to come and partner with the ministry and scale clean cooking. Yeah? Yes? It's either that or you come to the ministry and asking the ministry to support you in setting up a factory for manufacturing biomass stores for your fuel. It's either the two, right? I'll follow up. So, carbon rights and benefit sharing. Yes, question, microphone there? Yes. QR code project documents, yes. So when you click the QR code, you'll see 7 folders. Got the folder label VPA, improved biomass. You should see the PPT. You should see what you call the agenda, and you should see what you call the non-technical summary. You should see 3 documents there. And if you have not seen them, please let me know. I'll alert my colleagues again to make sure it's there, but I think they've already been put there. Yes.
Ensuring that everyone is involved, like all communities. Like, are there options for refugees and disabled people being incentivized because they would want to adopt such technologies, but because they don't have like a specific incentive scheme for them, they may not be able to adopt them. So if that's incorporated into this, it will make sure that project developers will be able to ensure that much as they get to target these people, there could be a special incentive program that they could be able to benefit from so that they can be involved.
I know for a fact of 2 development partners within the East Africa regions like Masiko and JZ who are doing quite a bit of work in clean cooking within the refugee settlements. So they're usually part of the inclusion. But you mentioned something that reminds me that when you're selling your stove, and I want to make sure this is very, very clear, when we are selling your stove and you know your stove is going to be part of a carbon project, you need to ensure that when you're selling your stove to the household, you tell them that this stove is part of a carbon project and there'll be carbon credits. And if they don't want to be part of that carbon project, they have a right to be excluded. Our point is clear, right? Hello? I know I have very few minutes of being heard. So just give me a couple of minutes, you're almost done. But please make sure there's free, prior, and informed consent. When you're selling the stoves, and you're telling the household that you're going to be part of a carbon project. Okay? Because when the auditor asks such a household and say they never agreed to be part of that program by way of writing somewhere or signing somewhere, then that household will be excluded. And if there are too many such cases, then you'll have problems with your project. I know you have heard me. Okay? Free, prior, and informed consent, please. I know in schools, you'll always have to tell the school. There are teachers, you are not getting out of that. But for houses, please, let's not abuse households, yeah? We must make sure we tell them this stuff is part of a clean cooking project, there'll be carbon credits, and this is how you might benefit, etc., etc. Are you willing to be part of it? Yes, sign here. No. Together. Okay.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether we have another session on like pricing or we have it?
Yes, next
Okay,
section.
maybe just put this before it gets lost. I wanted to ask, he mentioned something nice in the communities, for example, in vulnerable communities, if maybe those projects could earn more carbon credits such that we can easily incentivize. Is that the right one? Yeah, at least subsidize more. I don't know whether there is that provision. Yeah, but if not, I have more questions coming on the pricing.
Okay.
I'll wait for,
so
for it.
it's not that they will earn more carbon credits, but the price might be more because you can attach the story that these stores are part of a refugee settlement. So it's not that more carbon credits, no, potentially a higher price. But remember, like any product, because carbon credits is like any other commodity, we have to sell the story. We have to always sell the story. And that's what we are really looking at doing, and that's why the ministry is championing this conversation. Okay? Yes?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Now, my concern or question is, I'm specifically in energy and institutional stoves, and they have been doing this for more than 15 years. This goes, I think, specifically to Mr. Tashovia. Is it possible for me to, for you to call on the projects I've done before into this project? Because these stoves are still existing. As I mentioned earlier, we just do minimal repairs, but they are still functioning. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, still mine. Is that a question? I want to break your heart, but also just give you a lifeline. And I'll tell you why. For how many years? Let's say you said 10, 15 years. The stores are paid for in full. There is no debt or anything. So why do you want carbon finance? Okay, so usually the argument being made in carbon finance is there's a principle called additionality. That which you're trying to get, will it have happened without intervention, or it won't have happened, it will only happen with your intervention. You have been doing an institutional clean cooking project for 10, 15 years. Good. An argument will be made that there is no need for money because everything has been paid for. However, we can go back to 2, 3 years and see what's the case of the stores in those 2 to 3 years. Because we cannot have a case whereby you're having perverse incentive. Something has happened, something transitioned, all bills are paid, then that's good. There's no more story. We can, however, talk the story about scale. And that's we can go back like 2, 3 years. And we'll have to really look at some of those schools you're talking about. But you can't go back as fast 10, 15 years. That one, I'll just tell you that it's good to show that your solution is robust and your stoves can stay for those number of years. But backdating, getting those credits from that far back, that one is auditor's nightmare. But we can talk about scale. We can talk about how expensive it is, if it is expensive to do the repairs. And that's where you can bring the case and say the schools can't afford the repair. So that's why now we're talking about, again, carbon financial models, where we have to look at it on a very technical perspective. But something as far back as 10 backdating credits, no, most likely not. But we can talk about now the scaling of more schools. So yes, I have to break here, but still, it's possible, but not to the extent that maybe you might be thinking of? Because are there records to show how much fuel they are using every other semester? Most likely not. Yeah, so that's the reality. So we can go back, but not that far back. It will be a problem. Yes.
This current intervention then fall in the baseline, because it's already in place and it's what is happening. This is the business that's happening right now. Therefore, it is counted in the baseline and it's not a project intervention. And henceforth, any interventions that have already happened to date cannot be claimed for because they are catered for in the baseline scenario.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why for those schools he has talked about, most likely we can't. But for the last 2-3 years, if a case can be made for the cost of repairs is not possible for the school, we can make a claim on additionality.
Sorry, another question.
Guys at the back, I hope you're together, please.
Sorry. I think it's a very actually, this has been the most engaging discussion. I wanted to also ask, so would I, the question has escaped my mind.
Baseline.
Yes. So this same school, now, I mean, it's done its 15 years, and maybe the cook stove is dilapidated. It has reached its end of life. Would I be then able to give them a new cook stove in my new project scenario and, demolish the old one and then give them a new cook stove? How would such a school then qualify to be a beneficiary?
It's cool, but now the baseline was firewood. I'm assuming before you transition, they're using firewood, and now they're using some kind of pellets or briquettes.
They were still using firewood. But when we modified the stove, we changed now. It is more saving than before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, Madam, so in this case, if the lifespan, it was end of life, we need to redo the stove or something of the sort, and it's costly, the schools can pay. We can make the argument from an investment analysis and say the schools cannot afford to pay for this new lease of life. But we can't talk about getting credits for what happened that far back. That won't be a problem.
For that trees I saved behind.
Yeah, and
the forest,
you are still breathing the air.
Yes,
you are still breathing the air. Yeah, it's just because you see, even with renewable energy projects, if a power plant comes online, it's been running for more than 3 years again, it was never registered, it's assumed there's no need for carbon finance. So it's always a question of how far are you into the mitigation activity. Yeah, because argument can be made, you are well off, you are doing nice philanthropic work of the sort. But the issue is just because of the accounting will be a problem. That's usually the main issue. Now, okay, question? I want to go into carbon credits and benefit sharing. Yes? Question?
Thank you very much. My name is Denise Aijuka. Away from carbon benefits and all that, I want to know who provides the SAM devices. I have 2 questions. Who provides the SAM devices? And then, is there a specific stove design that has been approved for this project? Or as long as UNBS has approved, that is okay?
Okay, thank you. So, I hope if I say no, you'll be the first. But the answer is this. Part of this consultation is to try and see who are those manufacturers, stores who might be interested to be part of this program. So as of now, if I'm to look at minimum specifications, will be 40% efficiency. Okay, but it has also said that if there are any other specifications to come from UNBS, they have to be put in place. But I don't know if any has been approved. I'll ask Dr. Crispas, but the idea here is we want to get these companies to be part of the program, which then comes to your first question, who provides the stove usage monitoring, the MRV system? So, you see, the reality is this. The ministry providing a platform, but really, at the end of the day, it is you guys who are selling the stoves to the houses. So we have to calculate and see how to do the monitoring and deploy. So in terms of who will be doing the deployment, of course, it will be the same companies because you know we have taken two. But the question was who's footing the cost. That was now you're saying when you come, we talk about those things. That's why you're talking about the enabling environment. But Dr. Tashobia can give more color to the answer.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that takes me to the question of the cost of testing the stove is really high. I'm glad Mr. Tashobia is here, and also Justin is aware. So you need to look into it. CRIC, UNBS, we need support. Stove testing.
Denise, thank you. Just like my colleague Justin mentioned, this is one of the most engaging sessions that we have had. We want to thank you because we are getting this information. One thing I want to tell you, the reason why we have organized this session is to get your feedback so that we understand the best way to design this kind of program that best suits your expectations. Because at the end of the day, you are the user and the beneficiary actually. That's number one. Number two, we have not qualified any staff to participate. But the assumption now is we shall have a minimum threshold. If you are going to participate in the program, your technology may not be below the set parameters that are going to be put in place. As long as they are slightly the same, which Justine called the minimum, and above, then you qualify to participate in the program. The issue, again, that came up, how do we monitor? I think, Justine, when we were in Ghana, did we see someone who has an improved cook stove and had put a monitoring? I think, yes, there's an innovation that is going on. As if I recall, I saw someone putting in an improved cook stove a sensor. We saw it. So I think these are, and partly part of these benchmarking missions is really understand what is on the ground. And yes, I want to feel that these are some of the things that are needed. But again, on the side of the business, the design of the structure of the carbon project itself is expensive, right? Someone has waved it off and has said, the structure is here. Simply bring a stove. But for you to participate, also put in a sensor. You get where I'm coming from. I am trying to think that this is a trade-off. Right? Then he says that please, you must ensure that the efficiency of your stove, again, is at a bare minimum. I think it becomes much easier for you to say, okay, the Uganda word which says gender gankolachi, ndabayo, you have already seen at least where you're heading. It becomes another conversation, right? Justin, would you want to do a rejoinder?
Just to also add, and the question you've asked about testing is very, very valid. You can't have a carbon program without the testing infrastructure, without the experts to do the tests. And yeah, so in that regard, we are doing, so on the back end, today we are discussing carbon. But in previous discussions, I'm sure you're privy, and we've even taken you to UNBS to see how we are collaborating with them. We are supporting UNBS with the testing infrastructure. To date, UNBS doesn't have the infrastructure for testing emissions. So we shall be supporting them, at least that one is under. It's a government program, the Clean Energy Access Program. We shall also be selecting some identified laboratories that we can strengthen to provide that testing service. That is one. But two, product development. Because as we set the standard, we would expect projects that participate in this carbon to have higher efficiencies. As the consultant has said, the higher the efficiency, the higher the carbon. So we want to work with you, the private sector, to develop and innovate so that you have more efficient technology. But third and most importantly, there is no stove that does not qualify, that does not comply with standards that will participate in this. So as a minimum requirement, the stove has to actually have a standard, yeah? And that is why, as the ministry, we are now going back to review the standards. A number of them had expired. The market has changed. There's a lot that is happening. As some of you participating in the standards review process, I know we have some stakeholders here. So it's through that review that we are updating the standards. We're even developing a biomass label that we shall work with the producers to then adopt, and then with time, it will be a requirement to participate for the label. It will be a requirement to participate in this program. However, for the standards, it's a no-brainer, yeah? That's why in every, I'm sure you're now seeing it in every government program, even new ECC, RBF, we're asking you for a standard if you're complying to the standards. If there is any SNV program, we are email, I think we're also asking for that. So I urge all private developers to go and get their products tested and work towards getting the standards and certification. That notwithstanding, we, as the ministry, we have a program that we are starting actually very soon. We shall be certifying. We are going to work with about 60 companies and provide them certification. So as we make demands and ask you, since you're the early starters, we shall work with some of you and build your capacity and give you these services. But ultimately, with time, we expect you to take on that role. And given that you're generating this carbon revenue, this carbon money that will enable you to do the certification, product development, and improvement, I believe everything will be possible. Thank you. I hope that answers your question.
So thank God this is like a consultative meeting, and I want to share my experience from like over 10 years ago. We used to work, we used to help some companies that were earning carbon credits from cook stoves, biomass cook stoves, and they used to attach sums on cook stoves, but it was quite challenging. We used to call them buttons, and they had like batteries, like watch, yeah? You know, watch batteries. But these buttons were not efficient enough. To some extent, they would go off, or some that have been attached on the stoves, the users, the kids would remove the buttons. You go back to correct data, and the buttons are lost. Now, thank God the technology is improving. I've already seen a device from Vast Carbon attached to electric pressure cookers. I think you can even attach on gas cylinders. That part is, I think there is progress on that. But for biomass cook stoves, I'm not so sure. Those days, even the buttons would get spoiled before the data is collected from them. And also the process of collecting data itself was not easy. You needed a special device where you can put a button and then download the data and then analyze it. So I don't know for this. And also, it was quite costly. For example, look at this scenario where you have a project, for example, in Moya, in northern Uganda. You have another project in Kisoro. You have another. How are you going to meet those costs, especially when you're starting? I think carbon credits, they make more sense as years go by. But at the beginning, that upfront income or capital to start the process is quite pricey. And I think that's where we would want the ministry to also come in and support. The same way the RBF has come in, or subsidies or something, but I think we need some bit of financial support on meeting the nitty-gritties of those first phases. Thank you.
That is rightly noted, and we've noted in the clean cooking sector, access to capital is a very, very big challenge. So one of the interventions we are designing, we've already started with an electric cooking fund where one can access financing at an interest rate of about 14% per annum. but to get short capital, within 6 months, we are also making some collateral waivers for collateral because we are de-risking this funding. We are also discussing something called a sustainable bioenergy fund, and noting that in the sector, I think the current existing funds can help you get funding to, for cook stoves. However, when it comes to manufacturing and especially for the fuels, there is a bit of a financing challenge. So with that, we are designing a program with funding from from the French Development Agency. We are designing some funding opportunity which private companies will be able to, again, benefit from. However, to benefit, you'll still have to be compliant with the standards. So please, I urge you, because we are not we're not supporting substandard products. So I also urge you, for you to get our funding, we are also going to require that you comply so that the product because it's so sad, if you go to get a loan from the bank and the product is substandard, then UNBS comes and seizes everything. How do you pay back the loan? So you increase the risk, for the bank. So it's important. Or a consumer complains. Now the consumer got the product through the bank. Now the bank is now involved in all this. So in order to ensure that we advance this sector, we are making it mandatory for standards. We are going to have the energy efficiency and conservation law in place. And when that law comes into force, it will become mandatory that every product on the market conforms to the standard, and that is when we shall start to enforce it. But as we do it, we are developing, the landscape, the ecosystem, and also doing the capacity building and hand-holding for our private companies so that they can comply. So whereas today we are discussing carbon, I need to tell you everything has been well thought from the grassroots. Do you have financing? No, let's get financing. Do you have quality products? Let's equip the laboratories. Let's support you in product design. Is there a law to enforce? We have also developed that. Do you need capacity building? We are also designing that and also doing continuous awareness campaigns as you're seeing what is happening within the sector. Thank you very much.
So we'll now go into the second last session, which I think is an equally interesting one for the carbon finance. So like I've always been trying to mention that how many credits you can get from one stove depends on a number of factors, be it thermal efficiency, what are you displacing. So we took some time to run through some numbers for a typical stove of particular parameters. How many credits can we get just for demonstration purposes? Now, but when it comes to beneficiary, like I mentioned, there's a regulation in place for carbon markets within the country. Check clause 18, it speaks on a beneficiary plan that every developer must be able to adhere to. But what do most developers do with this money? Like I mentioned earlier, the different options or approaches that these fellows use, most of them go towards subsidizing the price of the cook stoves. Yeah, and that's where now the work of carbon financial models comes in, and that's the kind of support we shall be providing. You can also look at the case of pay-go models, whereby asking people to pay something in piecemeals as well. There's a mention of who and how are you going to be doing the device monitoring. There's a cost implication to that as well, and that is something that the carbon finance can go towards. A lot can go towards, a lot can be shouldered by carbon finance, but not everything. And the specific nuances, we shall come to that for the specific companies once you're designing the program. Like I'd mentioned, these slides are in the folders. I just want to focus on some quick numbers because I know there are some questions in terms of how many credits, etc. I know there's a question from online. What are some of the subtractions? So you can see this in detail once you download. I'll just speak on a few things that the different methodologies are applicable, as I said earlier. Depending on which methodology you pick, you'll be required to do different levels of monitoring or providing the verifiable information. Like I've said, one thing that is cutting across a majority of the stoves is what you call the embodied emissions, which is the emissions to manufacture a stove. That one, no one is escaping. Yes, you're doing good climate mitigation activities, but there are some emissions tied to your stove doing the manufacturing. Now, some of these methodologies are asking you to multiply the calculations by a downward adjustment factor, and we shall be looking at how much exactly for each methodology later on. And when you're looking at the case of, we are trying to see a scenario of a household in Uganda using 3 stone firewood, about 4.7, about 5 people for the household. We are seeing that the allowable baseline emission for that household will be about 2.4 tons of emissions. And then when you're deploying this stove about 40% efficiency, how many emissions can be tied to that stove? Our calculations are coming to about 1.2. How you get carbon credits, remember I said, you're looking at your baseline emission, subtract the emissions because of your stove. So when you take that, if you're assuming a household emission is 2.4, and the emissions because of your stove is about 1.2, that difference subtracts something else. Remember I talked about the Hawthorne's effect in the morning? Sorry, for those not there, it's people behaving differently when they're knowing they're being monitored. There's a particular factor we are also calculating that. So if I take your baseline emissions, subtract your project emissions, I'm coming with something just under about 1.1 or thereabouts. And of course, these numbers will depend on the efficiency of your stove. If your stove is 90% efficient, most likely you'll have fewer project emissions, and of course, most likely have more credits. So it all depends. These are just for illustrative purposes. We played around the same numbers for a school of about 200 learners, 2 meals a day to 60 calendar days. How many credits can we get from a stove of 40% efficiency? Again, just playing around with numbers to see. So we are seeing a typical school about 8-point-something credits per annum. A school of 200 learners, 2 meals a day, and whatnot. Yeah. Again, if the stove is more efficient, I don't know, the guy's gone. My namesake Charles. If the stove is more efficient, maybe we can get more credits. But the key thing here is seeing if your school is 200 learners and you're getting 8 credits, it can't do much for a single school. But if you put 1,000 schools, 10,000 schools, then those numbers start making more sense. So, question.
And we are going to collect data that gives us an average size of a typical Ugandan school. But if then, would one assume then if you are dealing with a school with a population of 400 students, then you'd probably have double those credits? Okay, so that would mean that schools with bigger populations would then be more attractive for a project developer who is seeking to maximize the carbon revenue. Okay. Then also the other question is, so given that these methodologies all have different, they derive, you derive different carbon credits by a small factor of 0.1 thereabout, would choosing from one methodology to another, does that improve the quality of credits or the amount of money that you can get from a carbon, yeah.
So I'll answer the question indirectly. So I don't want to be crucified by the gold standard. You see that methodology, the verify and the TBD tech, it has been there for the longest time ever. And some of the issues have been, because of it was still weak. But of course now it has been revamped. But then our analysis was able to see that if you compare the clear methodologies, the new kid in the block, compared to TBD tech, it gives you slightly more credits than TBD tech, because it does not have more stringent mechanism than now the new version of the TBD tech. So this clear methodology was championed by the Clean Cooking Alliance, so it has got no baggage of the old. So one can say, let's stick with that. But the other one is tried, tested, it has been there for some time, it has been through all manners of problems, but it's now being revamped. So it's a question of, to see, do you go with the new kid or the experienced kid? But that's the reality. Different methodologies will have small difference because of the extra factors that have been taken into consideration. But to play it safe, like I mentioned in another forum, is that because UNFCCC is looking at for Article 6.4 in approving clear, then that will be a safer bet. If you're looking at now 6.4 as the pathway long term, that will be the safer bet. Yeah, that will be the safer bet to make. Okay, so for the companies, as I mentioned earlier, part of the work we are doing is now to support the companies in working on all these calculations. So for you can focus on the manufacturing and distribution of the stoves. Any question?
I think I missed something on your table because I'm not familiar with the calculations. So I missed, for example, a stove, a household stove that has at least 40% efficiency. How many credits can it? 1.1. And how much is that?
Multiply by whatever amount.
Yes, like
$10.
$10.
Yeah.
That's per day?
Per annum.
Oh my God. Okay, I have 1,000. The cost of also, doing that.
The cost, that's where.
I also need to know, do we really need to install monitors on every stove or, yeah?
Maybe. We have two scenarios, right? We have what we call large scale, right? And maybe we have what we call business as usual, right? Here we are talking in thousands. If you went to a manufacturer and you said maybe you are looking at procuring, right? Maybe thousands of meters, the price will not be the same as when you're just purchasing maybe hundreds or maybe less, right? And this is now what this program helps. Maybe can we now start thinking of doing, of course, those are some of the discussions we now need to start having. Can we have joint partnerships so that we have maybe similar meters? And so we aggregate them and procure at the same time as private sector. Those are some of the language. I think those are some of the ideas we could start now developing.
Thank you so much. Now, for me, what I want to see, I'm someone that has always, I'm a big advocate for clean cooking. And for some of these questions that I'm asking such that maybe someone who was unable to ask can learn and understand this properly. What I would like to see are some of those requirements that are needed. And where are you going to get this? If you want this information, if I need a stove use monitoring system, where am I going to get it? Who's going to monitor this stove? Who's going to do the calculations for me? Who's the consultant? Is it gold standard? I don't know. Is it a local person? I need to be able to see that. One last one, I would like to have a real example, for example, for people that have benefited from carbon credits. Do you have some figures on how much they have earned at least to motivate the house? Yeah.
I'll start the last one. I, Charles, have never seen a carbon project developing company go bankrupt because of not being able to sell credits. That's my statement. That's my statement.
Just a minute, just to allay your concerns, I just wanted to tell you that the reason as to why you're participating in this program and the government is taking that initiative, we are breaking down that political risk and doing those transactions on your behalf. So there is no way. I think this actually makes it less risky for you as an individual to come and work with us because it's a win-win or lose-lose for all of us. And we want to win. We are the winning team. So don't worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add from what Justine has just said, you will realize that companies that have embraced carbon financing across the board have thrived, right? We do not have any company that has embraced this kind of mechanism and they are still struggling. That means there's something, right? And from, I think, a lot of research, again, stipulates it. There's an opportunity here, which is very evident. And that's what we are trying to prove, right? One of them is that it is an automatic subsidy to your price, right? The moment you do that, it means you trigger demand. How? If the price lowers, everyone wants to buy, regardless. The moment everyone wants to buy, you, the supplier, wants to produce more. That's simple mathematics. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So maybe after this thing offline,
monitoring infrastructure, we are looking at how we can potentially work. Okay, those are discussions we are having as the program materializes and matures. I mean, if this is an enabler for unlocking the carbon revenues, how can we then provide financing which we recoup in terms of carbon credits as well? So we are looking at those discussions on how we can, address that financing issue to avail the technology, so that that doesn't become a barrier to implementing or getting high integrity credits. Yeah.
So there's a policy support, there's technical assistance for doing the carbon, there are financing mechanism available. That was the English called no-brainer. Yeah, I think the enabling environment here in the country is in your favor, to be honest. Yeah. So just to quickly now close is on the monitoring plan, like I mentioned, different methodologies provide the different monitoring plans. If the device can be metered, then that's fairly easy in terms of just taking stock of the realities. If it cannot be metered, then you're looking at the case whereby we are doing a sampling approach. And of course, the stove tests will also come in very, very handy. I wouldn't want to reiterate. The last bit of this conversation is when this project comes to life now, how do we ensure that the ministry and the rest are able to collect continuous input and address any grievances? Where are the grievances coming from? Remember, I talked about free, prior, and informed consent. You're selling a stove to the house, you must sell this house, it's part of a carbon project, and this is how you're going to benefit. You're selling a stove to a company, to a household, and maybe for one reason or the other, you're told there are issues with it, and you are not so responsive to going to fix the issues. So remember, I mentioned again that the ministry is the coordinating management entity. It bears the ultimate responsibility to make sure that this project is done successfully. So of course, you provide the stove to a household or to a school. It's your ultimate responsibility to make sure you support them in the repairs and maintenance. But who does the school or the household go to if you're not picking up those phone calls? Yeah, that's where now the ministry will have to come in and say, hey, you provide this stove to the school. Can you provide the necessary support as per the warranty, etc., etc.? So once the project comes to fruition, the same way we have got the website right now, we'll be having that place whereby issues, complaints from households can always be addressed, especially where a developer is not being very, very responsive. But for the current conversation, we are still collecting feedback. There's a QR code that takes you to an online form. You can give us the feedback, or you can give us the written feedback as well. We really want to make this project as near perfect as possible. Okay, that is the idea, and that's why we're really doing this consultation. And just because you don't have an idea today, for the next 30 days when the idea comes to mind, please go to that link. That's why I really insist, scan the form, get the link into your Google Chrome history, and just have it there. Any idea that comes to mind, just put it there and click send. In the fullness of time, when the feedback window comes to an end, we shall do a very comprehensive local stakeholder consultation report where literally all the questions put forward today here will be printed verbatim and the responses provided as well. And When the project is being registered, it will be anchored at the Gold Standards Registry. 5 years from today, 10 years from today, you will see the comment you made about the project, because we have to be very, very transparent in the process within which this program has been designed. Okay, so I hope that one is something that everyone is comfortable with. And to close and then open for just general questions and comments again, is we start by saying we're looking at multi-fuel. We are today afternoon looking at the case of improved biomass, but the story did not end there. On Tuesday, we'll be back here at the same hotel, Silver Springs Hotel, this particular room, and looking at the case of LPG. I know some of you are doing biomass, you're doing LPG, you're doing ethanol, which is very good, diversify your portfolio. So if you're interested in LPG, know someone who's interested in LPG, please ask them to come here on Tuesday, 8 a.m. in the morning for a full day consultation on LPG. It's a full day because there's a lot to talk about there, and that's why a full day has been allocated as well. And then for those who are keen on biogas as well, we'll be meeting in Mbarara on Touch It on Thursday for that conversation. If you can't come there in person, please join us physically for the hybrid conversation. Okay, so 30-day window starts officially tomorrow for this particular engagement. Please make sure you have scanned. And those who have given us the physical comments, we appreciate it as well. I won't want to take any more time. Otherwise, I'll want to pause there to see if there are any quick questions or remarks. And if not, I'll then want to pass this back to the ministry to look at towards closing the consultation. Question here, yes. Any questions targeted particularly to me as the consultant for the technical design? Happy to respond to. If not, then I'll be able to ask Dr. Crispus to take over from here. Yes.
Thank you so much. And I'm now taking an interest in how I can now invest in how I can earn carbon credits in cookstove promotion. But what I heard was that for me to earn carbon credits from a certain technology that I do not manufacture, I need rights from the manufacturer, right? Okay, which is also, I don't know how easy that is. Very easy? Okay, good. Now, I just wanted a random figure on how much has ever been recorded in history of carbon credits for a single stove, like the highest carbon credit a single stove has ever earned. I know Justin mentioned $35 for 38 for EcoSafi, but I also understand that previously carbon credit projects actually, I think they were opposed to some extent because there were a lot of irregularities. So I don't know if this was really not implemented or if it was done in the right way. Just wanted to have a figure on how much you think a stove, because I've also seen that there is a lot that a stove has to be providing in terms of, for example, SDG benefits. Like how much a household stove that cooks for about 5 people, how much credits it can get if it is solving a lot of issues. Yeah, thank you so much.
So I'll go back to this slide, and please take note. It's slide 41. If you go to the PowerPoint presentation, it has a summary of the credits per household and institution. So for a household, for that particular stove rating I was mentioning, it's about 1.1, 1.0. That's the typical credits based on the stove you're using for the calculations. For a school of 200 learners and a stove of the same 40% efficiency, we're looking at about 8 or 7.5 credits there. The price for that particular stove was when the stove sold its credits last year. So it's a recent price. And they walked the talk. They had a lot of the digital monitoring, reporting, verification system in place. There are not many credits. It was a batch of about 5,000 credits, but still, it's good money. Remember, the working assumption is this: if you're in the cookstove business, you start your business to sell cookstoves. Any money that comes on top of post-sale of the cookstove is valid added revenue. Correct? Yeah. So that's why if you really just make sure your business is right, the carbon finance can come in to help you in your scaling. Most of the players, and I'm happy to show this after the consultation, most of the players who are doing cookstove business, for the carbon lens, when they go into a country, it's 500,000. 500,000 stoves. You go big. I'll be honest, they tell me to do 10 stoves, I'll say, okay. Just looking at you, okay. You'll make money, but it's not the one that will really make you wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and think of the next country. Yeah? So we go big. And if you can't go big, it's individual, we can always aggregate. 10 million households. Let's say we just say 2 million households improve biomass pellets. Just 2 million households. 5 companies. 400,000 stoves each. If 2 million households are giving you 1 credit each per annum, that's 2 million credits. Sell at $10 a credit. That is 20 million, and it's dollars for USD, eh? USD. USD. To be very clear, it's USD. Okay? So the opportunity is there really, and there's a lot of enabling environment in the ministry is providing. So let's see who wants to work with the ministry. Let's walk this talk. Anyone else with any closing comments or questions from a technical perspective before I pass it to the ministry?
You know, today you find somebody loads cook stoves, puts them in the back of the truck, goes and sells them, apply and sold. How much detailed, again, monitoring and data collection would you need to have to participate in such a program? Because I know for sure that it's going to have to change. You're going to have to need to take a lot of information about the beneficiary to even also understand what they're currently using. So so maybe just to help them appreciate, our suppliers to appreciate that when we start to implement these carbon projects, it's going to be business unusual. Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, if you're looking to be part of this program and you're selling the stoves, what are some of the key things you need to take care of? So number one, assuming you've gotten your efficiency report that speaks to your efficiency of the stove, good. So if you're part of this program, the key thing we have to do is be very intentional. We look at, let's say the truck was carrying 2,000 stoves being taken to, let's say, Mbale districts. A representative sample will be about 22% there. If you do the statistics, so 22% of that is about 400 stoves will have to be monitored. That will be the sample of that now particular district. And the sampling really is very simple. We want for those households to literally know their kitchen diary, literally. For a typical week, what do you cook on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? So like for almost a couple of days. And then do the same analysis for several houses, the 400. Then come and say, what is the estimated activity emissions or potential emissions of the stove? Of course, you'll have already done the baseline study. We shall have done it together. So it's just now the monitoring of the emissions of your stove. We do about 400 houses out of about 2,000. And then we just see how are they cooking, what are they cooking, and then we sample the emissions from all those houses to have the representative sample of activity emissions per household of this stove in that particular district. Okay, and that's the support. There are a number of questions we often ask, yeah, in the feasibility and also in the project emission stage, and that's the kind of work we'll be supporting. So it's a sampling usually is between 20 to 30% sampling. Representative sample is 20 to 30. Okay? Final.
Thank you so much. Now, I wanted an estimate. I've seen devices from your company attached to pressure cooker, I think also gas, I don't know, but I remember seeing the one on a pressure cooker, but also for biomass, the stove use monitoring. How much are we looking at?
Credits?
No, the devices.
The stove or the
stove monitoring devices. If I were to attach on, for example, you mentioned 400 stoves.
If it's, so the one you're doing for pressure cookers is electric pressure cookers, yeah? So if you're doing an electric pressure cooker and you're looking at the carbon, you have to put DMRV in every device, 100%. But for this improved biomass stoves, we'll not be using the MECD methodology, we'll be using the other ones, the one called TVD Tech, and we won't need to monitor every device. But if you're a business who want to come to electric pressure cookers, induction cookers, and do an e-cooking carbon project, we have to put a sensor in each device. So your question is, how much is the cost of the device? my dear brother, you might be able to give me the numbers, but before he says, I'll say, no, I want him to give me the response. It depends really on the scale, but yes, Mutai.
Yeah, so Ian Mutai is my name. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Vast Carbon. So the price change, it varies based on the order quantity. We've seen pricing starting from about $12 for electric cooking, all the way to about $20. But it really depends on the scale. So if with a ministry, you can leverage economies of scale to reduce the cost of that, because the more you order, the cheaper it can become. And then there's also issues of the amount of data that you want from that particular device, because you could have a low tier sensor that doesn't give you very granular data on user behavior. But if you want a more sophisticated thing that would allow you beyond the carbon beyond the carbon computations to understand how your users are using the device, then the costs will be slightly higher. But the range is usually between $12 to about $20 to $25. That's for electric cooking. For the biomass, it could be a bit different as well.
At that, at that point in time, I think I want to appreciate you guys for taking time in bearing with us today. Oh, the last of the last.
Okay, thank you. Considering that different stages of the production and distribution of these biomass products, emissions are generated, how does the ministry intend to assess and verify this information? Because I do know that the project developers would be able to give information perhaps on how they're going to produce these different things, but then now it's not clear on how these emissions are going to be assessed, because each of these different biomass products, different emissions are generated depending on where they're generated from and the kind of technologies involved and all that. So at the end of the day, it doesn't have an impact on the final product or the final emissions reductions that would get to accrue from the usage of this.
So to get your question, is you asking about the emissions of the products doing manufacturing? Yes, so the reality is this. Okay, so today you come to me and say, I want to do the carbon project, this is the stuff. I'll ask you, why was your manufacturer able to assess the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions? Most likely the answer will be no, most likely. So solution, default factor is given as for every device, what is the embodied emission? It's 0.017 tons of CO2e per device. That is the emission that you have to subtract on account of your manufacturing. So the good thing with the methodology is wherever one cannot calculate something, you have the liberty of taking a default factor. The only thing the default value is always given, they are not healthy. They've really done something to it. So it's encouraged you come up with your own. It's like FNRB 0.4. It's pretty low. But the cost of you coming up with your own FNRB is time and money. What will it cost you to get your own emissions for the device? The manufacturer will tell you that's too much work, blah, 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 blah. So if you can't get the actual value which might be beneficial to you, you have to use the default values. And they're always very, very conservative. So that's the reality. And that's the remedy. And I think that is it. There is no further question. I want them to invite Dr. Crispus Tashobia to take us through the closing formalities. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Vast Carbon team. Let's give them a bigger round of applause. They have really done commendable work. And specifically, let's grab hands for Charles. Since morning, he has been standing here talking these technical terms and has simplified the work for each and everyone here to at least live today and you know what carbon financing is all about. Trust me, the carbon developers on this globe, no one can explain this and you understand it. This team is the first one of its kind to explain these terminologies and we understand them as simple as we are seeing, right? Some more hands of applause to these people. So thank you so much. Of course, we had quite a number of objectives when we were beginning. First and foremost, and I want to pause, is to assess whether these have been achieved. One, when we reached here, I said we are here to present to you the structure of the program of activities. Let me be sure that we now understand the program of activities. By just show of hands. Wonderful. At least we understand that. Number two, we also wanted to present to you about the methodology. That caused a lot of questions. Let me be sure that we now understand the methodology. Wonderful. Then we're here to present to you the benefit sharing and grievance resolution mechanisms. I hope you now understand what all this is all about. But most importantly, we wanted to pick that information from you so that we continue to design what works for you. I am very happy that everyone is now eager to join the program, right? Including my brother here, Byanyuma. He's very eager to join the program. So we want to thank you and being attentive while the consultants were doing presentation from start to end. Everyone was quite attentive. We want to thank you so much. That said and done, we have prepared tea for you, evening tea. Please, clean cooking as you can see. Please, as we close this session, pass by and pick a snack and a cup of tea and enjoy it. Of course, as we try to interact and discuss more about this program, let me now invite Justin, who is representing the commissioner, to come and give closing remarks. Then we call it an evening. Thank you for God and my country.
My part is very easy. Meeting closed.
You told them that people should.
Hi, please, group photo, a quick one.
Excuse me, as we are going for tea, you're advised to move with your gadgets because there is another group that is coming in. So you be careful with your gadgets. Thank you.